a belated welcome to the Football Hipsters podcast. I am your host, Kris, and many thanks to Josh for stepping in so ably and covering me as I jaunted around London last weekend. So thank you very much on the outset to Josh and indeed to Joel. But this week it's the gruesome twosome back in the saddle. So I will be hosting, and I'm happy to say that Ross has found his internet lurking at the back of a cupboard, and touch wood, we think it's going to work. So hello, Ross, how are you?
Yeah, good evening. I'm perfectly fine. Just keeping my fingers crossed that my internet can hold out for the next hour or so. But let's find out, I suppose.
Yes, yeah, we're not professionals here. We're working with the host is a massive amateur, and the internet is equally so. So let's hope it works out. Right, before we launch into the show, and we've got a few things that we want to know from you, lovely listeners, at the end of the show as well, so stay tuned for that. But before we launch here, we should just give our sponsors a mention. They are, of course, 4Elements Web Design. That's 4-elements-web-design.co.uk. Kris and his merry bunch of men, top blokes, you know the drill. Kris has been very, very good to the pod. He's still doing some graphic work for us at the moment as well. So big thanks to him and the team. You can also follow them on Twitter. They are at 4ElementsDES. Give them a follow. Give them some love. I know that two of our listeners do, Jimmy and Graham Dixon. They both follow. So thank you to you, gentlemen. More on new listeners later as well. Got a few shout outs to give. But please do give 4Elements a little look for all your web-based needs, whether that's branding, web design, marketing, or video production. They do it all, even a bit of SEO and strategy. So give them a shout and they will get you covered. Right, Ross, we're going to go kind of backwards to front today, aren't we? We're going to mix it up a little bit. So you get to rest your vocal cords for a short while I rattle through some European stuff. I might just splice you in as we go, if I may. But we're going to start where I want to start. We'll start in France this week. So a quick Liga recap. So we saw Toulouse lose at home to Bordeaux on the opening game of the weekend on Friday night. Another goal for Malcolm. Heard much about him, Ross? I think you might have heard his name, but young Brazilian wonder kid coming out of France. Exciting stuff, isn't it?
I imagine it is, yeah. I mean, with the internet being what it is at my house at the moment, I don't get the chance to watch Liga as much as I would like to. But every time I go on highlights packages and every time I catch up on Liga news, he's a name I see popping up. Hopefully I get the chance to see him play at some point, because it would be nice to finally put a face to a name. But he certainly sounds like he's impressing early doors in the Liga season. Yes,
much like Richarlison at Watford, who you probably have seen a little bit more of. More on Watford later, but yeah, he looks a player all right, and he got the winning goal. Monaco 3-0 winners over Strasbourg. Ronnie Lopez, 2 more for Falcao. Just quickly on El Tigre. It looks like a man reborn, do you think? Or is there a little element of the league being maybe not as frantic as the Premier League was? Or what do you think?
I think it's probably a bit of both. I mean, he's a very good player. We can't ever deny. I mean, the Premier League clearly didn't suit him. It just didn't work out for him for any number of reasons. And I think that kind of anger and resentment to his time in the Premier League has probably helped him as he's gone back into Liga. But I mean, I as much as it's very easy to say, well, Liga just doesn't have very good defenses, and he's a very good striker. I think that's a little disrespectful, because there's some teams in Liga that do set up very, very professionally. So I'd probably lean towards suggesting that he's a player that has been inspired by the tough times he had in England, and has now come back into a winning team that suits his style a lot more, and is really starting to find his feet. I mean, Monaco this season, they seem a bit off to me at the moment. They don't seem the same Monaco as last year, and I suppose that's only natural considering the sheer amount of losses they've had in terms of personnel. But he's the one constant, and as long as they have him there, you kind of get the feeling they'll have enough about them to still be a relative powerhouse in Liga.
Yeah, I agreed. And they had that 4-0 reverse against Nice last week, which is a real shocking result that nobody really saw coming, apart from it happened last season at the same time. So it's very weird how that's worked out. But yeah, Monaco sitting in second. They haven't had a bad start, but as you say, they're still finding their feet. So nice, comfortable 3-0 win over Strasbourg. We saw St Etienne win again, their third, Ross, under former Brighton manager Oscar Garcia, flying up that table. So they're sitting in third. Another goal for Jonathan Bamba. and that was a 1-0 win over Dijon. Guingamp beat Lille. I know you don't follow his career sort of, how should we say, with huge sort of interest directly, but you'll of course know who Marcelo Bielsa is. It's not really working, is it, this Project Lille? They were the team that you sort of followed a little bit last season. We're all excited by what's going to happen, and yet another defeat, albeit a last-minute winner from Etienne Dido in this game. But yeah, Project Bielsa, happy ending, sad ending, what do you think?
I expect it to end quite bitterly. I think there's a growing trend at the moment. The two most high-profile ones are Bielsa and Arsene Wenger. Like, there's a growing trend at the moment of managers that have always had a set way of playing that have slowly over the past few years seen their style disintegrate and other teams start to work it out. And unfortunately, I think Bielsa is starting to fall into that category now because of the poor start he's had under, or he's had with Leo, I should say. He seems to me to be a manager that either hasn't developed or hasn't kept up with the way the game's changed, and that's maybe sacrilege to some of the more ardent Bielsa fans. But I just don't see, in what I've seen so far of Lille, I don't see the same panache and intensity that I saw from Bielsa teams of old. So it's disappointing, but at the same time, I think you kind of ran that risk when you hired Bielsa. He is that manager which it could either go absolutely brilliantly or it could go absolutely awfully, and at the moment it seems to be the latter.
Yeah, it's all going a bit Frank de Boer, isn't it, at Lille right now? But we shall see. We shall see where the project ends. I think, like you say, it's going to be up or down. There'll be no in between with Marcello. Also, other results on the weekend: Nantes beating Caen by 0-0. Girotto with the winner in the 73rd minute there. Montpellier picking up a very handy 1-0 away win at Troyes. Pedro Mendes with the winner there as Vizcarrondo saw red in the 90th minute for the home side. And on the Sunday, Marseille got a win, which is quite rare. Fair to say the natives are quite restless in terms of Rudy Garcia at the Velodrome, but a good 2-0 win. 2 goals in 3 minutes for Clinton and G, which I'm sure has Danny Rose searching for his Wikipedia page, formerly of Spurs, of course, if you don't get that joke. But a 2-0 win for Marseille at Amiens. Angers losing at home to Metz. Very good 3 points out for Metz. Nolan Roux scoring. Sound the klaxon. Who would ever thought would he get a goal again? Good win for friend of the show, Jez's team there. Mario Balotelli's winner for Nice away at Rennes. Did you see this goal by any chance?
I did. It was kind of the postage stamp, but the most narrow angle you could possibly imagine to the postage stamp. It was quite intense, that goal. I was expecting, when I read about it, I thought, and I started watching it, I was like, oh, he's going to go far left. To see him go far right, or near right in this case, was quite brilliant. And it's one of those moments where you sit back and go, oh, Mario, if only you were not so mental, you know?
Yeah, you can do it, just only in flashes. And if our listeners are wondering, it's a near post finish. I think that's what made it look so spectacular. It was a absolute thunderbolt. Goalkeeping error, has to be said, but wow. And the final game of the weekend, we saw PSG. Some people are saying cheat their way to victory. Some sour grapes, maybe. As much as I love Lyon, I do think it flattered them. I must admit, I didn't see the game live, but I've seen it back since, and PSG were not that impressive. The biggest story to come out of this game, Ross, probably, well, two stories really, but there were 2 own goals, Marcelo and Morel, however much Cavani wanted to try and claim one of them. But maybe the squabble over Neymar and Cavani over a penalty. I don't know if you've read this, but you know it's serious when Neymar unfollows Cavani on Instagram. My, what a time to be alive. But what do you make of this? Is it a big deal, or is it just one of those silly little kind of flaps between two professionals, quote unquote?
I've always lent towards these kinds of incidents being relatively small. I mean, I used to ball boy for Southampton, and I know firsthand that sometimes in the middle of a game, football players can get quite antsy. And, you know, I was on the receiving end of a few harsh comments from some players if I didn't get the ball back in quickly. So I imagine if you're in the middle of a game where you're drawing 0-0 against a potential title rival and there's a penalty, and both of these two huge stars think that they're the ones that can put this penalty away, there's going to be some friction. And I understand that. You know, we've seen it with plenty of clubs. I mean, Austin had one last year. I think it was him and Tadic had a feud on the field over which one was going to take the penalty, and then he scored it and it was all forgiven. You know, Cavani misses it and therefore it's a problem which obviously bleeds over into the personal life. But I think it's just water under the bridge after a day. It's just one of those things in professional sports.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I don't think it's anything to write home about. And if there is a spat between those two players, I think we know which one's going to come out winning it somehow. The man worth 225 million quid, probably. But the only other thing to mention from that game, I say the only other thing, the performance of 20-year-old Tanguy Ndombele, who was making only his second ever appearance for Lyon, having made his debut in Apollon Nicosia in midweek. Again, I think you've seen a little bit of the highlights of this lad. It would be far too early for us to say what sort of player he is and judge him, but just purely for the performance, he looks a player, doesn't he, for a kid of 20? He came in absolutely no fear and hit a rocket of a shot off the bar as well.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, all I've really seen is the highlights package, and it's very dangerous to judge a player just on the highlights package. But certainly from what I've seen of him, he looked like he had something special about him. Obviously, it's far too early to start touting him as the next whoever. So let's see how he develops. Let's see how he goes in the next few games. But it's a very impressive start. When you can get tongues wagging in a game against PSG, then I think you've got a talent.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I think he's one we'll be keeping a little eye on over the coming weeks and see what happens with his career. But 20 years of age and built like that, crikey, I'd be quite happy to be built like that at 34. Thank you very much. Anyway, so that was Liga in France this weekend. Just very quickly, PSG atop, 6 played, 6-1 standard. Monaco is second, 3 points behind PSG. They've won 5 of their 6. St Etienne third, Bordeaux fourth, Lyon or Lyon, whichever you prefer, fifth. Marseille, despite all their troubles, is sixth, with Nantes, Nice, Caen and Guingamp making it at the top 10. Down at the bottom, Metz, 3 points from their 6 played bottom. Strasbourg, second bottom. Dijon, third and in the relegation playoff spot. Lille, Troyes, Rennes, Amiens, Toulouse, Montpellier and Angers up to 11th is the league table currently. Just while we're here, Ross, Lorient on top of Ligue 2. So
very nice.
We're coming back. Played 7-1.
I actually have a question for you on Liga, very briefly.
Oh, go for it.
PSG, do you think they can go unbeaten this year?
Oh,
I'm not saying win all their games, but I'm asking the question: can they go unbeaten? Because I was talking to someone at work about this just the other day, and 6 wins out of 6, some very impressive performances in there. Given the front line they've now got, is it a distinct possibility? The only thing he said to me was, "What happens if you get to a quarter-final stage and you've got Nice or Lyon or someone in between
Champions League
legs?" So
that's.
It's a good question, but I was interested in your opinion because we haven't actually spoken Liga in quite a while, and I think PSG clearly they're one of the big stories in Liga, but I think there's more to them than just they've spent a lot of money, and I think this is a genuine consideration.
Yeah, I agree with your friend. He's a PSG fan, isn't he? I think.
Yes.
So a little shout out to him. Got my PSG shirt yesterday. Happy days. Yeah, I think they can. I mean, obviously they can. I agree with him. The 2 things that are going to stop an unbeaten season, I think, are Champions League, because they are good. That is their bread. That's the one thing they want over anything else. I think Liga is a bare minimum. If they don't win Liga this season, Unai Emery is out of a job. Simple as that. I mean, he clung on for dear life last season, and I think it was when Patrick Kluivert lost his job as sporting director. I think that's what kept Unai Emery in the job, because they rather changed the sporting director than the manager, and I think there was a lack of very high profile managers available last summer as well, other than Thomas Tuchel maybe. So yeah, I think Liga is their bread and butter, but if they're in the Champions League quarter-final or semi-final, I can't look that far ahead of their fixtures would be. But if you think they might have to go, maybe as you say, away to a Nice or a Monaco or a Marseille or a St Etienne or something when they've got a really big Champions League game in midweek, you could see them resting some of the stars, and you could just see one of those freak results, if you know what I mean. It's one of those that just goes against them. The only other thing that could affect them as well is that defence. They aren't good defensively, and unless they buy in January, which I don't expect them to, Thiago Silva's still remains unconvincing. Marquinhos and Kimpembe are still learning the trade. Areola's sort of in because Kevin Trapp's not very good, but Areola's not convinced everyone. So you know what football's like, Ross. You can be unbeaten for a long, long time, and then you can just lose a goal in the last minute when you haven't played very well. So I'm going to put my head on the block, and I'm going to say PSG will lose 2 games this season. So there you go. You can take that to the bank.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a disappointment for them. They lost players like Krychowiak. If they're gonna attempt an unbeaten season, I think Krychowiak is one of those players you're going to want in those kind of situations. But
Yeah,
it's an interesting question.
it is indeed. Yes, one player they probably won't want is Hatton Ben Arfa. If anyone's seen Hatton Ben Arfa, please write in. We're concerned about his safety because we've not seen him for months. So I'm not even sure if he is actually still alive. Bless him. The only other story this week. Did you see the story about Levin Kurzawa apparently being involved in the Didier Deschamps incident of bribe blackmail?
I didn't know.
This has kind of come out today. I'll get you the exact story. This is what you call live broadcasting for you. But there's a story that the French left back Levin Kurzawa. It's sort of leaked today that he could be involved in something that's a little bit. How do we put this? Do we say it's a little bit? I don't know what the wording is. A bit dodgy. Can I say that? Is that libelous?
Well, I was going for illicit, but that may put a slightly different tone on it. I'm not sure without knowing the context of the story.
Okay, so here is the story. I should just read you these links now. So, oh no, that's the wrong story. I don't want to read that one out. I now can't find it. Here we go.
He's opening some very dodgy links, my friends. I want to know what kind of stories he's looking at right now.
Here we go. So, Levin Kurzawa blackmailed over incriminating footage in which he speaks out against Didier Deschamps. So, basically, police have been called and are looking into the attempted blackmail of Levin Kurzawa over this video, apparently where he criticises Deschamps, and he's in a, yes, you've guessed it, kids, a shisha bar. Why do footballers never learn, Ross? Seriously, why do they never learn?
Well, when did it become a crime to disagree with your manager? Am I missing something here, or?
Well, I kind of agree with you. I think it's more what's been said. Basically, I think it's the blackmailers. Several blackmailers have understood to have demanded 200,000 euros from the Frenchman, so the images were not leaked online. The video allegedly shows Levin Kurzawa in shisha bar with friends, where he's seen making rude gestures. I'm sure you can imagine what they are, listeners. And speaking ill of French manager Deschamps. The footage was filmed on a mobile phone. He was threatened initially. He then contacted police, who went undercover as intermediaries in order to force the blackmailers into a meeting. 5 individuals have been taken into police custody over the affair in the last 6 weeks, with 2 of them being held in provisional detention centre. That's courtesy of Get French Football News, so thank you to them. I agree with you. It's a bit of a weird. I suppose because he's been threatened and money's involved. That's what's.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, the story here is he's being blackmailed and someone's trying to hold him for ransom to not put these videos out. But I think that's the dumbest version of blackmail I've ever heard. Because even if that did get leaked, what's the worst that's going to happen? He's going to have a week of saying, you shouldn't be saying that about your manager, and then it'll all go quiet again. That seems a very odd story to me. But still, there you go.
Does seem odd, doesn't it? The only other odd story I saw this weekend was Lyon manager Bruno Genesio's mobile phone number was leaked on Twitter, and Lyon have first taken legal action over anyone caught using it. So L'Equipe run that story. So busy week in France.
They call Liga dull. That's fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean it all happens. Apologies for taking ages to find that story. I was looking at completely the wrong link, so apologies, listeners. But we got there in the end. So that's France. We're going to do a little bit of a whistle-stop tour, I'm not going to lie, around the other 3 leagues. As I say, stay tuned to the end of the podcast because, listeners, we want to hear from you. But until then, Italy's our next stop to give you some results here. Inter, Juventus and Napoli still lead the way in terms of Serie A's table. Inter got the weekend off to a flyer with a 2-0 victory over Crotone. 2 late goals there. Skriniar and Perisic with the winning goals in the last 10 minutes to secure the points. Fiorentina Laviola won 2-1 at Bologna. Another goal for Chiesa's boy there. Lovely job. Also goal for Rodrigo Palacio. Remember him? He's still going. He got one back for Bologna, but Pizzella got the winner for Fiorentina. Roma looked impressive, which has been rare this season, has to be said, but they won 3-0 against Verona. Nainggolan and 2 for Edin Dzeko there. Suprarian was sent off for Hellas. And then on the Saturday, Juve winning 3-1 at Sassuolo. Hat-trick for Pablo Dybala. Happy days, Paulo Dybala, sorry. One back for Politano for Sassuolo, but Juve looking ominous after their Champions League disappointment against Barca, of course. Milan beating Udinese by 2-1. Nikola Kalinic with 2 goals there for his new club. And the happily mentioned Lasagna with 1 back for Udinese. Luckily, he didn't make a meal of it. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Napoli certainly made a meal of Benevento. 6-0 winners on Saturday as well. Alan Insigne, Dries Mertens with a hat-trick, including 2 penalties, and Jose Callejon with a thrashing there of Benevento. Cagliari also winning 2-0 away at Spal. Barella and João Pedro with the goals there. Torino with a 2-2 draw over Sampdoria at home, coming back from a goal behind there. Belotti on the score sheet. 2 goals in a minute, actually, for Baselli and Belotti in that game, before Quagliarella got the leveller for Samp. Chievo 1-1 draw with Atalanta. Bastien for Chievo, and Alejandro Gomez with a late goal for Atalanta from the penalty spot. Quickly, Russ, did you see Alejandro Gomez's goal against Everton in midweek?
I didn't. I caught the last 20 minutes of that game, which I'm sure we'll talk about later when we talk Everton. But no, I managed to miss his goals. I did see Dybala's opener for Juventus on the weekend. What a goal that was. But no, I am afraid I managed to miss that one for Atalanta.
Oh, it's an absolute rocket. Cutting in from the left-hand touchline, about 25 yards at an angle, whips it over Pickford into the top bin. It's a stunning goal. And it's with power as well, not like a curled finish. It's a proper rocket. So, yeah, lovely goal that. We'll come on to Everton later, I'm sure, Russ. And finally, Genoa, Lazio. 3-2 victory for Lazio, who've been quite impressive this season, has to be said. Ciro Immobile with 2 goals there, and Bastos. But did you, I don't know whether you know about this, so feel free to tell me if not, but did you hear the big story coming out of this game?
I'm afraid I didn't. You'll have to inform me again. You get a live on-air opinion, though, so that's always fun.
I shall out it. The scorer for Genoa, who've got both goals, was a very young man indeed. He's just 16 years of age. He is called Pietro Pellegrini. Yes, a 16-year-old. He was born, this will sicken you, 17th of March 2001. He was born. It was his very 7. First. I was well, but let's not go there. But I was quite young, and yes, it's his first start for Genoa in the shirt, or first appearance, I should say, and 2 goals. So he is. I think he definitely becomes the story of the weekend in Serie A. We've got the Chiesa, the young Chiesa lad, and the Simeone's lad, of course, playing in Serie A as well. But this really was the story. Pellegrini came on for the aptly mentioned Centurion on the 33rd minute for his debut. And coming on wearing the number 64 shirt, I might add, and scoring 2 goals. So I think that's another one we'll have to keep an eye on as far as names go.
He's younger than Toy Story. That upsets me.
Oh,
my greatly.
Goodness me! Don't say that. Wow, that's you won't get stats like that on Football Weekly, boys and girls. You will not get stats like that. Fantastic. So there you go. That was probably the story of the weekend as far as Serie A goes. Just quickly, an opinion from an outsider. Have we got a title race this season? We got Napoli, Juve and Inter all tied on 12 points, all won their first 4 games. We got Milan and all their money. Lazio looking impressive. Do you think there could be a genuine title chase this season?
More than last season, I would suspect. But I think Juventus have just got that league on lockdown from what I know of it. Until that Juventus team gets plucked apart like Monaco did, which I don't see happening, in the next season or 2. I am not convinced there's another team that are as strong as Juventus or can climb. I mean, the nearest one I can think of is probably AC Milan, but they haven't made the kind of start that I think suggests to me they'll have enough this season. So I wouldn't say that it's going to be a flat year and it's just going to be Juventus walking it like it was last year, but I'd certainly say it's going to be a bit closer, but not as close as perhaps the Premier League's might be.
I actually think Serie A is going to be the most interesting league to watch this season. I'm going to put that out there. I have a feeling that the Serie A title might end up at the San Paoli this season, or the San Paolo, I should say, Napoli. I have a feeling. I could be wrong. It does happen, boys and girls, quite a lot actually. But that's my thoughts. But yes, Napoli lead the table. Juventus and Inter, as I say, level with them. Lazio 4th, Milan, Torino, Samp, Roma, Fiorentina, Cagliari down to the top 10, with Atalanta 11th, Chiesa 12th, Bologna, Spal, Udinese and Genoa, and Sassuolo down to 17th, with the 3 in the bottom 3, currently Crotone, Hellas Verona and Benevento. So two of the promoted sides in a bit of trouble at the moment. Benevento played 4, lost 4. Goal difference of -9. So tough start for the real underdogs. But interestingly, though, Spal up in 14th. So good start for them. I always see Spa and I think Spa. I think it's a Spa Shop team for our younger listeners there. But yes, that's where Serie A stands at the moment. I'm just quickly glancing to see if there's a fixture that stands out. Oh, how do you fancy a bit of Lazio-Napoli midweek? Oh, it's a bit tasty, isn't it? That's on Wednesday, upcoming. And then next weekend's fixtures, probably the standout game, Sampdoria-Milan on the Sunday. Oh, sorry, I've missed one. The Turin derby, Juventus-Torino. Which is the evening game. Oh no, that's no. I'm looking at, yes, it is. Sorry, it's the evening game on the Saturday. So if you fancy a Turin derby, that is the one for you. So there's quite a few tasty fixtures this weekend upcoming in Serie A. So as usual, John is not around, but he's still around. So if you've got any questions on Italy, ping them our way. We'll do our best to botch them, or we'll just ask John. So thank you very much for those coming in. I think we might have a few, so we'll dig through those later on. Right, another quick whistle stop tour then through Spain in Joel's absence. Guess what happened with Real Madrid and Barcelona this weekend, Ross?
Oh, did they both win?
They did, yes. Sorry, I couldn't resist. But yeah, Barcelona winning 2-1.
For the record, genuinely didn't know that. Just to guess.
You are absolutely right. I bet you couldn't guess who the Barcelona goal scorer was for the winning goal, though.
Well, if you're not being sarcastic, then I don't know the Barcelona team nearly well enough. I'm going to just plump for Messi because it probably is, but I don't know.
Paulinho, remember him?
Oh, wow.
He got the winner in the 84th minute away at Getafe after Shibaski had put Getafe in front. Denis Suarez equalised and Paulinho got the winner. That game probably more mentioned for the fact that they lost Ousmane Dembele to a groin injury, which I think it was groin. I believe it's groin anyway. It's going to keep him out for 6 to 8 weeks after surgery. So that's a real blow for the new signing. But yes, Barcelona did win. Real Madrid also won in the final game of the Sunday fixtures. Borja Mayoral, the young prodigy, getting on the score sheet. Kevin Rodriguez on goal and Gareth Bale back in favour with the third. Kevin Rodriguez actually one of those rare commodities where he scored at both ends, an own goal and a goal. So Real Sociedad falling 3-1 to Real Madrid. Did you see any pictures online of the brand new stadium that Atletico Madrid ran out to for the very first time this weekend?
No, I'm afraid I didn't. Spain is just like stay clear of Spain at all costs. So
sacrilege! I can hear Joel cursing as we speak. Well, it has to be said, the venue Estadio Wanda Metropolitano. There we go. Let's try again. See, I try and do a fancy accent. It all goes wrong. Beautiful new stadium, has to be said. Looks absolutely stunning. And their very first game, Atletico Madrid, they won 1-0 over Malaga. It took a while, but in front of 67,000 capacity stadium, guess who got the winner? Anton Griezmann, of course. So, yes, good performance overall for Atletico, albeit sort of took their time to get the winning goal. But their home fans go home happy, and the stadium looks fantastic.
It's a shorter name.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah, I think the Wanda Stadium's probably going to be what it's called. But the one thing that was very interesting, actually, as an English football fan, brand new stadium, but the atmosphere, if anything, was just as good as the Vicente Calderon. So interesting that, because obviously being a man who supports a club whose stadium is not the loudest, it's interesting that the fans have basically just moved stadiums and carried on regardless. So
yeah, showing certain clubs how it's done.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But good win that for Atleti. The other results in the weekend, Eibar beating Leganés 1-0 on Friday. Alejandro Galvez with the winning goal there. Valencia continue their decent start to the season. Impressed a few people. They got a 1-1 draw away at Levante. Bardi equalising Rodrigo's opener. Deportivo La Coruña losing away to Betis on Saturday night. Joaquin, remember him? He's still going. I think he's 30, or I want to say 36. I'm going to look at it now just to be absolutely sure. Yes, he is 36, and he's still going strong with 2 goals. Catabia with a goal back for Deportivo wasn't enough. And then on Sunday, Villarreal winning very impressively 3-1 away at Deportivo Alaves. Goal for Carlos Bacca there, and 2 for Becambu. Sevilla winning away in Girona. Luis Muriel with the winning goal there. Las Palmas beating Bilbao. Loic Remy, remember him, Ross? He's still alive. Winning goal against Athletic Club in the 87th minute. So good for him. And tonight's fixture, recording on a Monday, of course, as we are, Gerard Moreno and Pablo Piatti getting the 2-goal winners for Espanyol over Celta Vigo, whose sole strike from Fontas was not enough. Still early days in La Liga, but the leaders are currently Barcelona, played 4-1-4. Sevilla second, won 10 points. Sociedad third with 9 points. Real Madrid, rather surprisingly, after 2 draws in their opening 4, are fourth, with Atletico Madrid fifth, Bilbao sixth, Villarreal seventh, Levante, Valencia and Leganes making up the top 10. Bottom 3 currently are Deportivo Alaves. Oh, sorry, Deportivo La Coruña, I apologise, are slightly higher up. I think I said Alaves. It's the wrong side. Wrong Deportivo. Deportivo La Coruña at 18th. Deportivo Alaves at 20th, with Malaga 19th, with their boss Michel under increasing pressure. He came out with a quote this week, the former Marseille manager, where he said that he hasn't spoken to the Malaga owner in over 4 months. Now, I'm not an expert, but I don't think that's a good board relationship. Do you? Really? I'm sure that's a good thing. Yeah. Trouble at Malaga. But second bottom, not looking great for them. And as far as a match maybe to look out for, again, it's a full midweek programme in La Liga. You got Bilbao hosting Atletico Madrid on Wednesday. That might be worth a watch. Valencia Malaga might be interesting on a Tuesday as well. The 2 big guns, Real Madrid host Betis. That's on the Wednesday, whereas Barcelona frantically searches the schedule. Home to Eibar on Tuesday night. You'd fancy them for a win in that one. So Sevilla Las Palmas also might be quite entertaining on the Wednesday. As far as the weekend's games go, next weekend, Barcelona are away at Girona. That's the evening game on the Saturday. Real Madrid are away at Deportivo Alaves on the Saturday afternoon game, but the standout fixture of the weekend for me, Atletico Madrid versus Sevilla. That's on the Saturday lunchtime kickoff. So there we go. And finally, Ross, we will just whip our way through Germany, Bundesliga. Hanover, they played on Friday. They beat Hamburg by 2-0. A goal from Harnik and Bebu with the 82nd minute clincher. Bayern Munich winning 4-0 over Mainz. Thomas Muller, Ian Robben and 2 for Robert Lewandowski, proving that maybe Carlo isn't under quite as much pressure as everyone seems to think. A 2-1 victory for Schalke, away from home at Werder Bremen. Leroy Sané with a goal for Bremen before Vekovic own goal, and Goretzka with an 83rd minute winner for Schalke. The mighty Eagles Frankfurt fell sadly this weekend at home to Augsburg. Philipp Max and Kubawi with the winning goals there. Jovic with one back for Frankfurt. Wolfsburg losing away at Stuttgart. Okolo with the winning goal there. And also RB Leipzig playing host to Mönchengladbach on the Saturday evening. That was an entertaining affair. Goal for Timo Werner and Kevin Augustin on loan from PSG. Sorry, I think it's a permanent deal actually, that one. Apologies, but he's gone there from PSG. Torgan Hazard and Lars Stindl equalised for Gladbach. Naby Keita, who will shortly be of Liverpool, sent off in that game in the 83rd minute, naughty boy. And then on the Sunday, Hoffenheim with a 1-1 draw at home to Hertha. Sandro Wagner equalised by Adrian Alexander, Svine for Hertha. Bayer Leverkusen winning 4-0 at home to Freiburg, sadly, boo. Charles de Rungis amongst the scorers in that game, as was Julian Brandt, 2 for Kevin Volland. And Borussia Dortmund smashing Cologne 5-0. Max Philipp on the score sheet twice in that game. Aubameyang also twice. And Pastadopulos, one of Danny's favourites, with the other goal in that game. All of that means that Borussia Dortmund are still top of the Bundesliga, having played 4 games. They've won 3 of them, drawn 1. They're level with Hanover, rather surprisingly, who were promoted last season. Bayern Munich and Schalke tied in 3rd and 4th respectively on 9 points. Hoffenheim, RB Leipzig, Augsburg, Hamburg, Stuttgart and Gladbach make up the top 10. Down at the bottom, Cologne are having a rotten start. Played 4, lost 4, minus 11 goal difference. Bottom with no points. They are pointless. Werder Bremen also not having a good start. 1 point from their first 4. Freiburg in the drop zone place as well with Mainz and Wolfsburg also looking over their shoulders. And as far as games go, again, it's an English Avoca this weekend, where we look at the midweek fixtures in the Bundesliga. Standout games, Schalke Bayern Munich. That's always a bit tasty. Tuesday, that's a 7:30 kickoff. We've also got Hamburg against Dortmund on the Wednesday. That might be an entertaining affair. And then at the weekend's fixtures, it's got to be a bit of Drew versus John in the old days. So Borussia Dortmund hosting Mönchengladbach on the Saturday night fixture. That'll be one to keep a look at. Also, might be worth tuning in for Schalke Leverkusen, which is in fact actually that's Friday week. So that's for next week's show maybe. Leverkusen Hamburg is the Sunday evening game there. Just quickly before we leave Germany and indeed the European football behind until the questions. Germany, there's been a lot of talk about Carlo Ancelotti being under pressure. There's been a bit of a split camp. Lewandowski's gone public about his criticism of the lack of transfer business. I think Thomas Muller has said that he's not really sure the coach believes in him. Again, a little bit of hearsay, do you think? Or is Carlo Ancelotti actually under a little bit of pressure this season at Bayern?
I suppose the problem is that with a club as big as Bayern Munich, you're always under pressure, regardless of whether or not players are coming out and making comments. I tend to lean towards there's no smoke without fire when it comes to these kinds of comments. I mean, we'll talk about Frank de Boer a bit later, but it sounds like there was a bit more about his sacking than just on the field. So if there's rumblings backstage, then clearly there will be pressure on the manager because you can't have that in your squad. But I mean, you mentioned this earlier with PSG. If Ancelotti goes, who's the standout candidate for that job right now? I can't think of a free agent that I would immediately point to off the top of my head. The only one I can think of that I think Bayern would be looking at would be Nagelsmann of
Hoffenheim.
Hoffenheim. I was about to say Herrenveen, but that's Holland. Yeah,
They'd like him.
Hoffenheim. I'm sure they would. So I can't think of another manager that would step into those shoes mid-season. I mean, any manager in their right mind would probably take the job if they were offered it. I'm not saying that they couldn't go and get someone from another big club, but I can't picture a reason why they would sack Ancelotti and then go out shopping for a manager. You know, they're a very well-run club. I don't think they'd make a snap decision on it. So, I mean, if there's rumblings backstage from players, then yes, I imagine there is pressure on him. But I think at the end of the day, on the field, Bayern Munich, they'll still do very well this year. As much as I hope Dortmund do it, because I do love myself a bit of Dortmund, Bayern Munich will still be in the top two by the end of the season. You know, so on the field, I can't imagine it's going to have too much of an effect. But if it starts bleeding into their play, then yes, Ancelotti is definitely going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I it's one of those, isn't it? I love Carlo. I know he's a bit of a finisher rather than a developer. You know, he comes into projects and finishes them off. But I just think sacking him would be ridiculous. As you say, who would they bring in? I mean, you know, maybe Harry Redknapp could do a job at it.
Yeah, maybe we'll get to you, Arry.
Yeah, we'll get to Harry. Don't you worry. Right. Okay. Well, we'll leave our European roundup there. At least for the time being. I think there's a few European questions which we'll get to at the end of the pod, but we wanted to, seeing as it's yourself and myself, Ross, we wanted to focus on your area of speciality. So happily, I can give my vocal cords a bit of a rest for a moment, because in the upside down, topsy-turvy show that we're doing this week, I fancy a bit of EFL. So being the professional that you are, I'm sure you've got plenty to tell us. So why don't we talk a little bit of Harry? Did you want to give us your, did you want to talk about Harry first and then give us your update, or do you want to talk some of the fixtures and then come back to him?
I think what I'll do is I'll quickly run through Leagues 2 and League 1, give you a bit of time to chill out, and then we will talk highlights from this particular weekend, because there was certain bits of news that crept out this weekend which are worth mentioning.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, go for gold.
So League 2, quick scan through the fixtures. He's sprung this on me, listeners. I've now got to try and pre-plan. Coventry City, I think, have had an indifferent start to life in League 2, but I certainly think they've had a much brighter start to League 2 than they did at any point during the League 1 season last year. Slightly shock defeat, I suppose, away at Cambridge United, 2-1 defeat. I do fancy Coventry for at least the top 7 this year, so it's always a bit of a disappointment when I see them lose, because I think they're a club that desperately need a bit of something to cheer this season. Chesterfield are one of the teams that sacked their managers this week. Gary Caldwell has left the hot seat at Chesterfield after a 2-1 defeat to Accrington Stanley. I do like Gary Caldwell, especially for what he did at Wigan in League One, but at Chesterfield was a bad fit. He ended up getting them relegated. They're now 23rd in League Two, only 1 win and 5 points from 8 games. It's just not been a good fit, and it sounds like the fans are quite unified in their decision and their praise of the chairman for getting rid of Gary Caldwell there. Crawley Town, they're a project I'm keeping an eye on because Harry Kewell is currently the manager at Crawley Town, but they've managed to pick up another defeat this weekend to Notts County. Notts County are absolutely flying though. Kevin Nolan in charge there. They got up to second. The biggest story, not just this weekend, but for the whole of the League One season, the League Two season, I think it's going to be Exeter City. I think, Chris, you and I both love us a bit of Paul Tisdale for his eccentricity. But last season, he came very close to getting the sack after about 10 years, maybe a bit more at Exeter City. We all know the story by now. They were bottom of the league in the bottom 2 in December, and then they ended up in the playoffs by the end of the season. This season they've come flying out of the traps. They've picked up exactly where they left off. No defeats in 8, only 1 draw, 7 wins. They just have to look absolutely brilliant, and a 3-0 home win against Croix Alexandra this weekend was exactly what the doctor ordered. The other club that sacked their manager this weekend was Port Vale, who had Michael Brown in charge. I think his most notable club was Sheffield United, if you remember the name. He brought in Michael Tong, who used to play with the Sheffield United, who's been doing a job for him at Port Vale, but couldn't keep him from getting the sack. They drew 1-1 with Forest Green Rovers, who I'm desperately hoping stay in the division this year, but I have a funny feeling they're not going to. But yes, the 1-1 draw with Forest Green Rovers was all it took to see Michael Brown leave Port Vale. It's a bit of a disappointment because he hasn't really had much time there, but equally, he hasn't made a very good start, and I just don't see him as a manager at the moment. So it's a shame, but hopefully he can pick up another club and prove me wrong. But I just didn't get the right feeling from Michael Brown. But there you go. Into League One. Oxford United, I really like the look of Oxford this year. They've played some very slick stuff, but they're also quite hit and miss. It's almost like they have a brand of football that's a division or 2 higher than the players they've got. They drew 2-2 with Bradford on the weekend. I still think they're going to be a very dangerous variable as we get into the rest of the season. But I think it's a disappointing result for them in the end. The biggest result from the weekend, I would probably suggest, is Portsmouth 4, Fleetwood Town 1, because Fleetwood Town just seem to be storming their way towards the championship this season, and they went to Portsmouth and got absolutely turned over. Some very good goals in that fixture, but I was surprised to see Portsmouth score as many as they did. Kenny Jackett certainly getting a tune out of them early doors. Wigan 3, Bristol Rovers 0. Wigan seem to be turning a corner now under the new manager Paul Cook, who they poached from Portsmouth. 3-0 home win against Bristol Rovers is a fantastic result for them, and they will certainly be eyeing the top 2. Whether they can get there or not is a different question, but that's certainly be the ambition for Wigan. Looking through the rest of results, Milton Keynes Dons 3, Rochdale 2 was a great result, but also just a great game in general. It was 2-2 by half time, with a goal in the 41st minute for MK Dons and then an immediate equaliser from Rochdale on the 42nd minute. And then the winner coming on the 84th minute from Southampton loanee Ryan Seeger, who scored, I think it's his first goal for the club, and it was a very good finish as well. Bit of a shame they're playing so much long ball, MK Dons, because Ryan Seeger is not a player that's going to score too many under those circumstances, but certainly popped up with an important goal there. And Blackburn Rovers, they seem to be the only club that dominates the headlines in League One this year. And whenever I'm on, I would like to remind you there are 23 other clubs in this division. They are expected to absolutely walk it. That much is true. They're not so far. It's been a little tougher than they thought. 4 wins and 3 defeats, I should say. No draws. They played AFC Wimbledon on the weekend, and it was another one of those results that a lot of the neutrals looked at and thought, oh, Blackburn will win that. And then they get turned over 1-0. So it's going to be a long, tough season for Blackburn. And I think a lot of people will just look at this division and go, oh, it's Blackburn. I mean, it's the only story from this league. But there's plenty of other clubs that need looking at, like, for example, Shrewsbury Town, who under Paul Hurst are undefeated, same as Exeter. 1 draw in 8 games, 7 victories, absolutely storming it early doors. Not sure they're going to be able to keep that up, but that's an absolutely fantastic start. The Championship then, It feels like ages since I've spoken about the Championship. I've missed it dearly. So the Saturday fixtures, we had Preston North End 3-1 win over Birmingham City. Birmingham took the lead early in this game, and it seemed to be that the sun was starting to shine on the Harry Redknapp project, because it's been kind of shaky early doors this season. And then Preston North End turned up and absolutely smashed them in the second half and scored 3. Obviously, we now know that Harry Redknapp has either been sacked or has walked. Sounds like he's been sacked. Chairman, I think, sent out a tweet that said it's not been made just on the basis of the opening of the season, but I think he's had less than 15 games in charge of Birmingham. So there's another argument to be had here. Has he had enough time? But we'll get into that in a minute. Brentford 1, Reading 1. Reading has had a really poor start to the opening of the season for me. 2 wins in 7 is just completely off the mark from where they were last season. Bristol City 4, Derby County 1 is a bizarre result, because Derby turned over Hull last week 5-0, and they went away to Bristol City and got turned over themselves 4-1. That's the magic of the Championship, and it's a massive result for Bristol City, but bizarre for Derby. Burton 2, Fulham 1 is another brilliant result for Burton. I think most of us, including myself, tipped them to go down this year. But if they keep picking up results like that, you can't look past them for staying up. Cardiff 1, Sheffield Wednesday 1. Again, Cardiff, one of the surprise packages so far this season. Only 1 defeat so far in 8. But I would still claim that as a strong point against the Sheffield Wednesday side that I think is slipping and sliding a little bit, but is still nonetheless a very good side in the Championship. Hull 1, Sunderland 1. Clash of the who knows what the hell expect from these two clubs this season. And 1-1, I suppose, is a fair result, but I can't read either of these teams just yet. They seem so bizarre. Ipswich 2, Bolton 0. Again, Ipswich, another one of those teams that have just shocked everyone early doors. 5 wins out of 7 for a team that has so little money to spend and essentially bases their results purely on team spirit. You can't help but like Ipswich, I don't think, even with Mick McCarthy, who I know doesn't tickle everyone's pickle, but is certainly a very good manager. Middlesbrough 3, Queen's Park Rangers 2. Great result for Middlesbrough. Assombalonga again on the score sheet. I have a funny feeling he's going to run away with the goal scoring charts this season. Millwall 1, Leeds United 0. That's a shock result. I mean, Leeds top of the table still, but to go away to Millwall and lose their first game of the season, it's a huge result for both of those sides. Nottingham Forest 1, Wolverhampton Wanderers 2. Wolves really impressive early doors. Diogo Jota with another 2 goals. Seems to be one of those players that I think we'll be talking about all season long. Nottingham Forest disappointed with that result, but they've been excellent early doors as well. Sheffield United 0, Norwich 1. Good result for Norwich, because Daniel Farke has not had the greatest of starts. And then Barnsley 0. Aston Villa 3 is another vital result for Steve Bruce, who just every time he seems to be getting Aston Villa back on track, something seems to pop up and derail him. But that's a very good result for them. So those are the results you've now caught up on all 3 of the divisions. So let's talk Harry Redknapp. Chris, I mean, is it naive to say that we should have all seen this coming? Because I sent out a tweet when it was announced that, even if you didn't think that it was coming, it was always coming, because this is what Harry Redknapp does. 70 years old, he came in at a time where there was 3 games left, got them to play a bit more defensive football, which played into the hands of the players they had, kept them up, got the job on a permanent basis, then brought in 14 new players, still complained he didn't get the ones he wanted and didn't get enough in. Is this just kind of like typical end of career Harry Redknapp? Is this all of the bad things we know him for culminating at one club, or is the focus being a bit too much enforced on Harry Redknapp here, do you think?
It's a hard one. I mean, one thing's for sure, it hasn't been terrific. Sorry, I had to. But I think the thing with Harry Redknapp is he's very, very good at playing the PR game, isn't he? He's always been one to. He's a friend of the media. He's sort of cheeky, chappy Harry, and as much as I think there is a bit of a myth around how good a manager he is, in my humble opinion. That's nothing to do with my Arsenal bias here and his ex-Spurs links, but I just think he's one of those managers that he's got lucky a lot of times, and he's done quite well a lot of times. But I would question how much of the two, how much has been luck and how much has been judgment. And this whole thing about not getting his signings, I mean, how many more times is he going to trot this line out? How many more times is this going to continue to come out? I just think it's an excuse, to be honest with you. I think at that age and in that sort of situation, how much more can he evolve tactically? I really question that. I just think that bringing in a whole heap of players and then blaming the board is very, very easy. looking at your own tactics and saying, actually, you know what, maybe I've overshot this. I think there's almost a bit of an arrogance that he felt I could just wander into the Championship and take another team up. It's not as easy as it was all those years ago when he did it, at other clubs. And I think that maybe any board that sacked Gary Rowett for the work he did, I think has to be seriously questioned, for employing Harry Redknapp in the first place. But when they did, as you rightly said there, I couldn't see it ending any other way but this. I mean, what do you think of the whole situation and football in the Midlands as well? I mean, it's so up and down, isn't it? Villa got that win at the weekend. I watched that game actually. I chose to watch Villa instead of Spurs Swansea, so you should be proud of me for that. And they looked pretty good, but I thought it was more about how poor Barnsley were at times and how the first goal. I mean, that was an absolute clanger from the goalkeeper, wasn't it? But Villa are rebuilding, but football in the Midlands, I suppose Wolves is the exception in the Championship. But what do you make of Birmingham in particular, the Harry situation, and maybe touch on Steve Bruce?
Birmingham, I think, are reaping what they sow. I was vocal at the time when they got rid of Gary Rowett. Everyone knows that I'm a massive fan of Rowett, not just because of the way he plays, but the way he influences teams. You don't have to look any further than his record with Burton Albion and then with Birmingham to know that you were on to a very good thing with Gary Rowett. So you sack him for no good reason, as far as I was concerned. You then bring in Gianfranco Zola, who hasn't had a good run as a manager since Watford. And then you get rid of him after absolutely tanking it, and you wait until 3 games to the end of the season when you've almost been relegated. You then bring in Harry Redknapp for a firefight at the end of the season. No problem with that. I think of Redknapp going in at Birmingham as much the same way as I do as Di Canio going in at Sunderland a few years back at the end of the season. I thought, fine, it's a good end of season appointment, which will probably keep you up, but do not keep him on. They kept him on. They trusted him with quite a few £1 million. I'm not saying he misspent. I'm certainly saying that, the Championship is far too rabid for you to be buying 14 new players and throwing players out, some of whom were perfectly good for the style of football that Harry Redknapp was trying to play, and then expecting it to be turned around in an instant. 2-3 weeks ago, he was still in the media saying we'll end up in the top 6. And I've seen Birmingham a few times this season, and every time I've seen them, I've just thought, you are so far off where you need to be, considering the talent that's at the top of this division. You look at the top 6 in the Championship right now: Leeds, Wolves, Cardiff, Preston, Ipswich, Sheffield United. That's just the top 6. And there's 2 or 3 clubs in there that won't even finish in the top 10, because you've still got Middlesbrough, Nottingham Forest, Sheffield Wednesday, Norwich, Aston Villa, Fulham, Derby, Hull, Reading, and possibly Sunderland, if they can turn things around, that could all end up being in there at the end of the year. It's not as easy as we've got some very good players now, let's go finish in the top 6, which seems to be the attitude he was carrying. I'm not saying it definitely was, because I'm sure it wasn't, but that was the persona that was put across. And from minute one, I just thought, it's a bad appointment, it's not going to work. And like I say, it's for me, it's just reaping what they sowed. They got rid of a perfectly good manager who I think if they trusted with the money, he would have had them inside the top 6 this season. But they decided he wasn't good enough. They've played fast and loose with the future of Birmingham, and suddenly they're like completely inept owners again. And I don't know who's walking into that job at the moment. I can't think of a manager off the top of my head. I mean, the big links at the moment I can think of are Alan Pardew, Nigel Pearson, someone else whose name's completely eluded me now. But I just don't see a manager that's going to walk in there and fix that team, because I can't see, with the way that the chairman seem to want the club to play compared to the level of talent they have at that club, Gary Rowett was the best fit because he got attacking football out of defensive players. I don't see another manager out there at the moment that can work that style of football back into Birmingham.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And Steve Bruce, I mean, does that lift the pressure on him at Villa? Is that result good enough? Because I mean, you just never really know, do you? Because it doesn't seem, everything doesn't seem rosy there, does it? It still seems like a project that's not quite right at Villa. I mean, do you think that this is the begin? They're unbeaten were they unbeaten in 5 now? I think Steve Bruce, he does like a quip at the media, doesn't he? I think he sort of came back with the line, well, not bad for a club in crisis. He likes a little chirp back. But has he got a point? Undefeated in 5, as I say, they're 13th. So
yeah, I mean, they've played 8 games, they've lost 2. That's not bad. That's pretty good in the Championship, considering how bizarre and erratic the results can be. It's like I say, there's so much talent in this league this year, and you can just name the top six again, and again there'll be teams in there right now that won't even finish in the top 10 because the division is just so talented. So Aston Villa with only 2 defeats in 8, that's not bad going at all, considering the overhaul they've had in the summer as well. They've brought in quite a few new players who now need to fit in with the style of play and the players they already had and whatever else. It's going to take time, and I think 8 games in, it's too soon to be throwing him under the bus. I know Aston Villa fans who saw them last year will say that we didn't do well enough across the back end of last season. He's now had a year in charge. I've not seen X, Y, and Z, but it's all circumstance. And I think there's a lot of circumstance playing against Steve Bruce the minute he walked in, because as I've said on a number of occasions, I think Di Matteo completely missed the boat last season when he essentially neglected the summer window until they got beaten 3-1 in the League Cup by a League Two side, and then thought, crap, we're not good enough. And then hurriedly tried to bring in a new squad. It didn't work, and Steve Bruce has been picking up the pieces since. So I think that the chairman so far has shown that he's intelligent enough and patient enough to recognise that Steve Bruce is one of the best managers you're going to get in the Championship. So we're going to stick with him, and we're going to build slowly. So I think he'll do fine as long as the wheels don't come off again. The problem with Aston Villa, though, is that they've had, I was going to say one good season in the past 5, but last year wasn't even that good, was it? So the fans are, at the moment, they're pre-programmed to believe that everything that goes wrong is indicative of a problem at the club. So Brucey has to just kind of calm things down, get on a good run, and start reminding people that we are a good team. We just need time, which I think is something that a lot of clubs are suffering from at the moment. It's just this feeling that we haven't improved from where we were the past X amount of seasons. I think with Aston Villa, they are one of the worst cases of it, and I think the fans just need to stick with him a little bit longer. If you get to Christmas and you're still unhappy, then I'm more than happy to change my opinion. But for now, I think 2 defeats in 8, that's not bad going at all.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, sometimes patience is the key. And just very briefly as well, there's one story I wanted to mention to you that caught my eye in the EFL this week, which I'll bring up in a second. But Leeds probably favourites along with Wolves. So maybe just a quick sentence about those two. And also, how are my tip for the Championship getting on this season? Nottingham Forest. Oopsie.
I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by Nottingham Forest. I think the football they've been playing is actually really good, and considering they haven't spent a lot of money, I think Nottingham Forest are punching well above their weight. If they could sneak in to 6th, I don't expect them to, but they've got an outside chance, so I wouldn't write them off just yet. Wolves and Leeds, they are the runaway favourites, because not just because they've started well, but they've started very steadily. It doesn't feel like either of those sides have left first gear yet. You know, it feels like they've got a lot left in the tank, and that's saying a lot for Leeds, who have been winning by 3-4-0 some weeks, and they've brought in some very good players. Very, very good business done there. So I like the look of both Leeds and Wolves. If they can keep up the steady pace, then no reason to question them as far as I'm concerned. I still fancy Wolves at the moment. I think Nuno Santo is a manager that can bring a bit more defensive stability to that side than Thomas Christensen can, who's been very impressive in his first 8 games, but I just see a bit more gung-ho about Leeds, and that's great. But I think Wolves are a bit more mature, as it were, and I think that will see them well across the entire season.
Yeah, I think you make some very good points. I have to be honest, I haven't seen as much Championship as I promised myself I would this season so far, but that's not because I've been watching other stuff. I've just not had time to watch as much football as I usually do, so I will get back on it. But I watched Leeds at Bolton when they won 3-2, was it? I seem to remember, at the early start of the season. And I watched Leeds again when they won, was it at Sunderland? They got, who's the goal when they were playing the black kit? 2-0, yeah, I watched that game as well. They look a side to me that is on a mission. I do wonder whether it'll be at Christmas. I think we'll have a better idea then. But Leeds look to me like a side, and I know it's the cliche of, they're a big club, they deserve to be back in the Premier League. Nobody deserves to be in the Premier League, but I think it maybe is time for a club of Leeds' stature to get that push back up. So time will tell, but it would be nice to see them high flying once again.
I'm also just going to say this because I can't guarantee I'm going to be here every week on this podcast to put across, how much I've enjoyed the Championship already this year. If you get the chance to watch the Championship, please do. If you missed it last season and you listened to us talk about it, you thought, that sounds quite exciting, but never really bought into this season is the season, because it is going to be incredibly competitive and incredibly tight. Like I was saying there, you look at that top 6, it won't be that. by the end of the year. There's some big teams yet that haven't even woken up. So if you get the chance, please, please, please check into the Championship this year, because this will be the season where you will decide whether you love it or hate it.
Yeah, agreed. And Sky's coverage, for all the knocks they get at certain things, their coverage of the Championship is excellent. So there's always plenty of highlight packages as well as live games to check out. I think they usually do on average 2 to 3 live games a week, and you've got all the highlights to check as well. So yes, do give it a look. We've kind of done the table, haven't we? But Leeds and Wolves are up there at the top, along with Cardiff. You've got Preston, Ipswich, Sheffield United, Middlesbrough and Bristol City sniffing around the top 8 positions. Sheffield Wednesday, Forest, Queen's Park Rangers, Norwich, Villa, Fulham, Derby, all in mid-table. Huge clubs there. As you say, this really is the season. Leonard Stutsky continues to struggle with Hull. We'll speak to Joel about them again when he's back on next week, hopefully. Down in 17th, Reading in 18th. Natives must be restless, Ross. Bolton struggling so far with their life in the Championship, bottom 2 points. Birmingham, as we said, second bottom as Harry walks out the door. Brentford also, I think they're in for a struggle this season. Only 4 points from their 8 games without a win this season. Only Bolton and themselves without a win this season. They're also struggling. And Sunderland down there on 6 points. You've got to think Simon Grayson is under a bit of pressure there as well. So all is not well. To be fair, Sunderland should be relegated for that kit alone. It is hideous, isn't it? Do you know what it reminds me of? It's like bananas in pajamas, but red, isn't it? It's just...
There's a reference.
Yeah, it's just horrendous. Sorry to anyone who's not the age I am and doesn't remember that programme, but Google it. Just before we go on to our Premier League chat then, just one story that caught my eye. A listener tweeted this to me. Apologies, I can't remember who it was. I'll have to look it up because it was on my personal Twitter. But somebody tweeted me and said... if you fancy a change of career, why don't you give this a look? And I had a quick look at the tweet, and I don't know if you saw this, but Doncaster Rovers, who are League One, are they? They're League One,
Yes,
aren't they?
They are.
They put out a tweet. I've just found it. It was a chap called Adam Yates at the Yatesy. So thank you, Adam, if you do listen to us. And it simply states vacancy. Doncaster Rovers have a vacancy for a kit assistant manager. You don't see that at sort of Man City, do you? Just a tweet saying, yeah, we'd like a new kit manager. It had 4 retweets and 14 favourites, one of which was ours. So don't think
they found your calling there, don't we?
They have, and their away kit's quite smart as well. This sort of green and black stripy number. It's rather pretty, that. So sadly though, Ross, Doncaster's a little bit far for me to travel of a morning. So I'm going to have to.
It's one of those fashion montages where the kit manager comes out in a new Doncaster kit, and you sit there in your chair, either shaking your head or raising your thumb. I could see you flying in that career.
If it ain't neon, it's not coming in. That's all I'm saying. So I was a big fan of the old, was it Yeovil's neon kit from 2 seasons ago? That was a lovely one. But yeah, there's a few dodgy kits this year. Derby's green number. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, that's the story for a rainy day. Right, so that's the Championship. Internet notwithstanding, if you want to ask Ross questions, tweet him, and I'm sure he will give you his answers as best he can. So yes, please do that, and we will get those questions answered. And even if he's not on a pod, we will ask him your questions if you have any. So tweet us, and we will get them answered as best we can. Right, before we finish the show with questions, we have a Premier League to talk about, so we shall do that now, Ross. Where should we start? Let's start with your boys, because you haven't been on for a little while, so we've got to give you a bit of spotlight. And it just so happens that your Southampton side were kind of in the big story of the weekend, because you hosted a Frank de Boerless Palace, Crystal Palace, who now have Roy Hodgson as their new manager. First of all, before we talk Saints, what did you make of the whole Frank de Boer affair? The fact that there's now been questions about. Did you hear about this, where they didn't realise he was as arrogant as he was? Did you see this story? Yeah. I mean, this smacks of massive under due diligence, if that's even a phrase. They really haven't done their homework here, have they?
No. I mean, it's difficult to properly analyse, because if you judge it based on the games, you get one answer. If you judge it based on the news that's come out since about broken promises and players already being unhappy with him, and the chairman, now they're living with him, has discovered he's got some bad habits, then you can kind of understand it. I mean, Pellegrino made a really, really good point this weekend. He was talking to our local journalist here who covers Southampton, and he talks about the De Boer issue, and he said it's kind of like going to the gym. You go to the gym, 2 or 3 times, you look in the mirror and you don't see a change. So you go after a year, you look in the mirror and you realise that after a year you've put on all this weight and all this muscle. It's the same with management. If you're going to keep De Boer on it, or if you were going to invest in De Boer's style of management, you needed to give him more time than that. If it's specifically because of footballing reasons, I don't understand it. If it's because of wider issues, like, for example, things going wrong backstage and broken promises, then yeah, completely understand it, because those things do happen, they do crop up, and sometimes they can cost you a job.
I think you make some excellent points there. And the Roy Hodgson, I mean, we should sort of touch on the game. Southampton winning by a goal to 0. Stephen Davis netting the winner on a good performance from him personally as well. Is there a case, because De Boer was sacked after 4 games? I think it's been well documented. Palace's next 4 games, was it Chelsea, United and City, I think I'm right in saying. Is there an element to suggest that Roy Hodgson could easily have the problem as well?
Yeah, I mean, he's picked up the same team, hasn't he? It's still this weird mishmash of half De Boer's new project and half the Alan Pardew way that we knew from a few seasons back, and it's difficult to know exactly what Palace are anymore, and that kind of identity crisis is going to be a problem going forward this season. So I don't know what Hodgson brings to this Palace side off the top of my head that's going to be revolutionary compared to what they've had in the previous seasons, which is my only issue. I don't see what he adds. I don't see what he develops. So I'm sure, given time, given the season, he could get them to a position where they will be challenging to escape this bottom 3. But I don't see him as the great saviour. He's not a Sam Allardyce. You look at his time at West Brom or his time at Fulham. He didn't save them from relegation. He turned them into a decent footballing side. Don't get me wrong. But Fulham, for example, they weren't in relegation trouble because they were too good for that. But this Palace side are slap bang in the middle of it, and they're going to be even further in it after a few games against, the Chelseas, the Man United, and whoever else they got coming up. So I understand it if they were mid-table, and I would have understood it a lot more pre-season. To do it now, I wonder if they've picked the wrong manager for the wrong moment, if you know what I mean. So difficult one. I'm sure given the season, he'll get them playing a decent brand of football, but at the moment, I don't see how Roy Hodgson coming in now is going to be the thing that's going to kickstart this team, because he's going to be playing football. He's not going to be defending his way back out of the bottom 3 and then moving up and building from there. He's going to be trying to play football like Frank de Boer did, and I just don't think that's right for Palace at the moment.
No, and that squad I don't think it's as good as everyone seems to think it is. I look at some of those players and I go, really? Are they really that great?
Loftus-Cheek is the standout. There was the one signing of the window that I looked at from Palace and thought, that's a really good bit of business. And he looked very impressive against Southampton. Now he's back from his injury. So I'm hoping that Hodgson, being an ex-England manager, will give him a platform, but he's got bigger issues at the moment. I don't see any other real standout players. I mean, I was listening to commentary of the game because I didn't have internet to watch it, and the commentary team featured Dave Merrington, who's an old Southampton fan, Southampton manager, I should say, that some people might recognise. He was being told by Adam Blackmore, the other commentator, that apparently there'd been a £25 million offer for Andros Townsend from Leicester. Wow. And you should have heard his voice when he went, really? What is he still doing here then? We should have cashed in on him. He's not that good a player. He should be gone. It's one of those squads that you just look at and go, man, it's a bit of a ragtag band, and I'm not sure it's got enough at the moment, especially if a guy like Benteke isn't, showing up every week.
Oh, yeah, he's having a stinker, isn't he? I do think, as you say, Loftus-Cheek being the substitution of him being booed, I thought was quite telling for the Palace Ultras that day. But what about your Saints then? Because we haven't had you on for a while to talk Southampton. I thought Mario Lemina was exceptional, along with Oriol Romeo. I thought those two together were sensational on the day. I thought they just did everything well. I quite openly admit I was sceptical of the Lemina signing. I was never really blown away with him at Juve, and when his time in France, he never really gripped me as a player who could do what he did in this game, which was just control the midfield basically on his own, or with Romeo. But what do we make of Saints? And would you like to touch on the big Virgil van Dijk shaped elephant on the bench in this game as well?
No, I'm going to say as I told you so, because I did. It was never in doubt. He was staying, and no one listened. So here he is. So I'm going to flip you off, which I just did, but you didn't see it. Anyway, so Pellegrino. I mean, he's had now, was it 5 games in? We've only lost 1 game. There were huge boos last week at the end of the Watford game, and I was listening to Joel and Josh talk about it last week. And they were asking the question that I'm sure a lot of neutrals did, which is, what did we expect? We wanted Claude Puel out. We've brought in a new manager. It's still the same old crap, this sort of thing. And based on last week's reaction, I can understand why the neutrals would think that. But it's another case of, like I was saying earlier with Aston Villa, you have to recognise that Southampton fans have had one good day in probably the last year, and that was Wembley, and we lost at Wembley. Aside from that, we haven't had a lot to shout about except for that cup run where we knocked out Liverpool and whatever else. But we got hammered in the Europa League in the end. We got embarrassed by some mediocre teams because Claude Puel played so negatively. We've had to sit through at least 10 odd games last season with Claude Puel, which were dull 0-0s or dull 1-0s, whether loss or victory, where we were just glad to be out of the stadium by 90 minutes. So we now come into a new season where Pellegrino's come in and he's trying to build from the back to make sure that we're solid so that we can at least keep a clean sheet while we develop the attacking side. And we have a game like we did last week against Watford, which was absolutely dire. And Southampton fans boo. Of course they do, because like I say, one good day in about 11 months or so. So it's another one of those transitional periods where I think Southampton fans need to be more patient. They need to recognise that Pellegrino is putting in a new style. I'm convinced it will come good, and I'm convinced it'll do a lot better than Puel's style did. The game against Palace felt like the real Pellegrino performance. It felt like his debut, really, because it was controlled, it was very creative, it was very offensive, but it was also very responsible, very mature. Like you say, Mario Lemina was absolutely the standout performer. That was his coming of age party. He and Romeo look like they can develop into one of the best central midfield pairings in the league this year. And if we can get Wesley Hood, who played some incredible long passes during that game across the field all game long, if we can get him working with Van Dijk now he's coming back in, then we've got a completely solid spine. All we need is to put the ball in the back of the net a bit more regularly, and I don't see a problem. I really don't. So I'm perfectly happy with where we are at the moment. 1 defeat in 5 is fine. We have got Man United next, which could bring out the Boo Boys again, but I'm perfectly happy. And for Stephen Davis to score that goal on his 200th appearance for Southampton was very, very nice to see. He's been an absolutely excellent servant. I think he was a free transfer when the Rangers project fell apart a few seasons back, and he's just been absolutely outstanding. So I have absolutely no complaints from this weekend. I thought, like I say, it was Pellegrino's coming home. He's coming out party, I should say. It was absolutely brilliant from start to finish, and we completely deserved the result. So I'm more than happy. I think next week we're going to get hammered by Man United, but hopefully we can kick on and the Southampton fans can start buying in, because, like I say, it's just a case of a bit of a hangover at the moment. We're still seeing these developmental performances from Pellegrino's side, which were the norm under Puel after a year, and I think people are just kind of reading too much into it. So give it time. I have absolute faith in him, and I think we'll come good.
Yeah, it's work in progress, isn't it? Everything takes time, and as you say, if you're scoring goals, I mean, the Man United game, it might be one of those games they really lift their game for. So
if you never know. 0-0 and it's the dullest game in the world, Southampton fans won't care. This is the problem. It's just the sense of style. The Watford game was terrible. I haven't seen us get destroyed by a team like Watford or on the same level as Watford like that for years. So it's a very mixed bag, and like I say, it's a hangover from Puel, and I'm convinced that by Christmas it will either be gone or you'll be in a position where we've realised we've picked the wrong manager in Pellegrino. But if we're in that position again, I think the focus turns to the squad, not the manager, because I think Pellegrino is much better than the Puel style we were living with last year. Yeah, time will tell. And that game is that St Mary's, the Man United game, or was that at Old Trafford? Yes, it is. It's St Mary's. Okay, so we shall see what happens this time next weekend. But we'll touch on a few other stories. We're not going to go every game for the Premier League because, frankly, we will
will have bored you if you go on forever. So we're just going to cherry pick a few. A little nudge to Bournemouth for their first win of the season over Brighton on Friday night. A game that will actually see the two clubs meet in the League Cup tomorrow night at time of recording. So that's interesting. But 2 assists from Jordan Ibe, finally starting to repay his hefty fee. Solly March put Brighton in front, but Sermon and Jermaine Defoe with his first goal for Bournemouth getting the winner there on the Friday night. West Ham also beat Huddersfield last week, this time with a 2-0 win, easing the pressure on Slaven Bilic, which then didn't exactly help when they got a 0-0 draw at West Brom on the Saturday. Natives still a bit restless at West Ham. We also saw Newcastle United beat Stoke City 2-1. Decent performance that for Newcastle, who sit 4th amazingly at the moment. Shaqiri equalising Atsu's goal, but Lascelles with the second winner in a week for Newcastle, taking them up to that 4th place. Huddersfield drawing with Leicester 1-1. Jamie Vardy's penalty equalising De Potter's opening goal for Huddersfield in a game that the Huddersfield manager, whose name completely escapes me, help me out here.
Wagner.
Thank you, David Wagner, who I really like. I really do. And I can hear our listeners now going, yeah, but you don't like Klopp, and he's like Klopp. I don't think he's anything like Klopp. I think he's a really smart guy. I think he's
he's
really
more mature than Klopp.
Me too. And I think what he's done with that side, Huddersfield, to get them up, albeit a bit fortunate through the playoffs, but he already, to me, Huddersfield already look like a side that's going to very comfortably survive this season. I could be made to look really stupid, but
I think this is a debate you'll have to have when he leaves Huddersfield, but I think there will be a genuine debate over whose body of work was better, Klopp's at Dortmund or Wagner's at Huddersfield's.
I agree. And it's almost like the Marco Silva element, isn't it? He seems to be a guy like Marco Silva who calls a lot of attention and there's interest. And don't forget, he turned down an approach. Was it Wolfsburg last season?
Wolfsburg last year.
So I think I get the impression he's the sort of guy that could go out for a meal in Huddersfield and everybody would be at his table asking for an autograph. Strikes me as a really switched on individual with some serious talent. So good that for Huddersfield, but they'll feel disappointed they couldn't get the 3 points. What game should we focus on? I don't want to focus too heavily on Watford, Manchester City, but we should just touch on it. Man City did this last season, didn't they? They sucked us into a false sense of security. I think they went 10 unbeaten, didn't they? First 10, blew everybody away, and then it all went a bit Pete Tong. I couldn't help but notice my best friend and yours, Mr. Pep Guardiola, heavily mentioning his fullbacks after the game. No surprise there that the most expensive players he signed this summer have been the fullbacks. But they blew Watford away. I think that is all fair to say. But Watford had a few dodgy decisions here, didn't they? At least 2 of the goals were offside for me. In a season that's been littered with very tight offside calls, as I would know from an Arsenal trip to Stoke recently. But what do you make of Man City? Are you convinced, or are you still sort of on the fence about where they are? They've won the last 3 games, 5-0, 4-0 and 6-0.
Yeah, I need more time to get a decent opinion on Manchester. I mean, the consensus will be that if you're on a podcast like this or you write like I do, you need to be judging more quickly than I do sometimes. But I am still of the opinion as a football fan that things just take time and you need to see them across a certain period before you can make a judgment. So I've put my opinions of last season to one side and I'm judging Man City on what I've seen this season. And they're certainly better. They're certainly a very good side. The signings they've brought in have moved them on to another level, but I want to see more of them. I think 6-0 against Watford is a fantastic result and they played some very nice stuff at times. But I also saw them this in midweek against Feyenoord and I watched the whole 90 minutes and I promised myself that no matter how many times the ball went sideways, I was going to sit and I was going to watch the full 90 minutes. And the result in the end was very good. Feyenoord were awful midweek, but it was a very good result for Manchester City. But there were still loads of periods where they just kind of played it around midfield to hold the ball, make sure Feyenoord didn't have it. And you had the same here against Watford. It was 6-0. It's a great result. But for me, as an entertainment value, there are periods in those games where I just go, oh, why am I watching this? But as results, you can't argue that it works. You can't argue that it's not going to be working across the rest of the season and you're not going to have more results like these pop up. But will you have results pop up where you get drab 0-0s, where for some reason they can't break a team down because they're just more defensively structured? I suspect after a while you will see Manchester City start to stumble again. But If I'm proved wrong, then awesome. I like being proved wrong because it means I'm learning something new. So I'm looking forward to seeing Manchester City this season. I hope they don't steamroller it like he did with Barca and Bayern in previous seasons. I don't think he will, but I'm desperately hoping he doesn't because it's just not the thing I want to be seeing in the English Premier League. But if it works, if you're going to win titles with it, then you can't knock it. So very good result on the weekend, but I'm reserving judgment still. I want to see them play more games to see if they can keep this up.
You won't be surprised to know that I completely agree with everything you just said there. So I'm still on the fence. And again, if Pep does what he blooming well should do with that amount of money, I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. I've done it again. But yeah,
he should do. Don't get me wrong. We'll talk about Everton in a minute, who have spent gobs of money, and the manager is still saying, "Well, don't expect results immediately." Piss off! You've seen the amount of money you've spent, and it's the same with Manchester City. You cannot spend the kind of money they've spent and then go, well, don't expect instant results. I'm sorry, but you spend that kind of money, people are going to expect instant results. So I'm not saying he needs to win the league undefeated, but you need to see a progression from last season at the very minimum. And so far we've seen that, which is great. But, I'm completely agree with you. If you're going to spend as much money as you do on these kinds of squads, and it's not just Man City, like I say, we'll talk about Everton in a minute. We'll talk about Man United and whoever else has spent a load of money, AC Milan, PSG. If you spend that kind of money, you bring a certain level of expectation with you, and it's not unwarranted of me or you to suggest that Pep Guardiola should be doing well this season, given the money he spent.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's fair. I don't think that's criticism. I think that's just a fair sense of reality.
The reason I sound wound up is because I know that people will say you're being very critical.
Oh, you're bashing Pep.
No, I'm not. I'm just telling you. If you're going to spend 140 million on something, it needs to be good. I wouldn't spend 140 million on a car and then be like, oh, it's broken down the motorway. That's fine. Give it time. We'll fix it. It'll be great. No, if you spend that kind of money on something, it needs to be good. It's just that simple, And I don't understand why it's so protective because he's Pep Guardiola and we can't be said. It's just bizarre, but there you
go. No, I'm with you. They do win the kit wars though. That purple number is bloody lovely. I do like that. So very nice. Yeah. Sorry, kit wars again. I do want to quickly focus on Liverpool Burnley as well. It's a simple question for you. Is our friend Jurgen Klopp under pressure? Because I heard a lot of very unhappy Liverpool fans ringing a certain BBC phone in at the weekend.
Yeah, without Scouse accents, which I found fun.
Yeah, especially the London geezer. That one made me laugh a lot. Yeah.
Amazing. Listen to that. Anyway, I'm not here to tell you that you can't support certain teams if you don't live in those areas, but I just found that funny. I think he is. I think that he's been growing pressure for a number of months because, again, you're expected to be achieving X, Y, and Z when you bring in the level of players and you spend the amount of money. I think the biggest issue that's going to cost him isn't so much they're drawing against teams like Burnley. It's the fact that everybody knows the problem with that Liverpool squad. And they tried to address it in the summer when they went after Van Dijk. They had to back off and had to completely distance themselves from any further dealings with him. And then it just seems like they went, oh, bugger, we didn't think of that. We didn't realise that Southampton wouldn't sell. Who do we go for now? And it seems to be the big issue that he just can't sort out that back line. I think there was a stat that he'd spent, I can't remember the exact numbers now, but it's like over 60 million on attackers and midfielders, and then about 15 odd on defenders in the time he's been at Liverpool. And it's so obvious for everyone to see, and he just can't fix it. So if you draw 1-1 against Burnley, and you buy Van Dijk and you buy, a left back that can actually play at left back, unlike some of the players they've got there at the moment, and you draw 1-1, I think Liverpool fans look at it and go, it's 1-1 against Burnley. But because he hasn't fixed that defence, everyone goes, well, you should have fixed the defence. We would have won that if you'd fixed the back line. And I think that's what's going to cost him, is it's just always in the back of your mind that he hasn't fixed the defence. So anytime there's any evidence that it's come into play, it's going to be thrown at him. It's going to be a weapon used to beat him. So he is under pressure. He does need to get it right. But I just, he's had 2 years there now, and he still hasn't got that back line right. I don't know when he's going to get it right. I just don't see when he's going to fix it unless he goes back in for Van Dijk next year. Yeah,
no, I agree with that. I do think the back line is key to Liverpool's success if they are to have any. I completely agree. Credit where credit's due. Burnley gave as good as they got for long periods of that game, and fair play to them. I don't think Sean Dyche gets anywhere near the amount of credit he should. And let's not forget, they're now unbeaten away. Well, they won at Chelsea. They drew it away at Spurs, and they drew away at Liverpool. That's not a bad record, is it? So
I'm not right thinking they're only like 1 or 2 points off of their last season's away point tally already.
I think you might be right. Yeah, and they're sitting seventh at the table. 1 defeat out of 5. Not bad, is it? So fair play to them. Tottenham Swansea 0-0. Tottenham threw literally everything at Swansea. I think it's 27 shots they had, just couldn't get one in. Again, credit where credit's due to Swansea. I think the back line has certainly been sorted out. I think Van der Horn even came in for this game unexpectedly, and he had put in a good performance. Tammy Abraham, by the way, really impresses me. I really like what I see from him. He reminds me of like an English skinnier Drogba. He's got that style of play. Obviously not at the level of Drogba, of course, but he looks like a talent to me. He's one that I'm very keen on. So it's a good spot from you last season. But yeah, very, very much credit to Swansea, and the Tottenham's hangover from their impressive win over Dortmund in midweek was very evident, and then they weren't able to get the points. So struggles for them as things stand. Manchester United with a very comfortable 4-0 victory over Everton on Sunday. We do want to talk about this game. Probably we have to give Manchester United the credit they deserve, because they were actually didn't think they were great for the whole game, but once again they turned the style on late on to make it really sort of emphatic. A goal for Lukaku against his former side, celebrated in the way he knows best, winding the opposition up. Antonio Valencia with an absolute stunner in 4 minutes. Henrik Mkhitaryan and Anthony Martial with the other goals. So yeah, full credit to Manchester United, but let's be honest, we're going to talk about Manchester United probably quite a lot this season. So let's turn the focus on a certain Ronald Koeman's Everton. You saw this coming, didn't you? And it's, again, few Everton fans not particularly happy. One viral video of a young lad on Twitter has particularly caught people's attention, I notice. But they're really not looking good, are they? They're not scoring goals. They're conceding a bucket load. There's a lot of excuses coming out of the camp. Don't really have a goal scorer. Their main goal scorer likes to have a drink and get behind the wheel, allegedly. It's not going well, is it, for Everton? It's not what Project Moshiri was supposed to be all about.
No, I mean, one of the funniest jokes I've read this weekend was that if Wayne Rooney got 5 points on his licence, he'd be above Everton in the league.
Very good.
It's all very strange at Everton. I mean, you say I called it, and I kind of want to say I didn't, kind of want to say I didn't, because I still think, as I've said before, that it's going to work. He spent a hell of a lot of money, and he's going to get it right eventually, and it's going to click. At the same time, I've been saying for months that this youth revolution thing that he was being credited with is a bag of crap, and was inspired by the fact that Josh Sims embarrassed him at St Mary's when he popped up and got an assist for the winning goal inside the first minute. And then in the post-match interview, Koeman said, "I've never heard of Josh Sims. I didn't know about him when I was at Southampton." And ever since then, he wanted to play the kids. When the injuries came in, they lost, I can't think of the winger now, Balassi. They lost Balassi to 11-month injury or something. And so the kids came in and they needed someone to fill in midfield. So in came Tom Davis, and someone to fill in at fullback. So in came Mason Holgate. And I said all the way through last season, that's absolutely great. I'd love to see him play the kids more. But when he gets to the summer and he starts spending the money that they promised him he would be able to spend, you won't see them as much. Now, this season, he has the Europa League as well, so they will play in that and there will be rotation, but you will not see them as much as you did last season. And all I saw on the weekend, when the formation first came out and after the game, was Everton fans complaining, "Why aren't you playing the kids? Where's Dominic Calvert-Lewin? Why don't you like him? Why isn't he starting with Wayne Rooney? I think that's a very good partnership. You seem to have something against him." Or it was, "Why aren't we playing Mason Holgate? He's better than Cuco Martina, for example, who was, seen as a throwaway fullback at Southampton, and yet he's now starting for Everton. So why aren't we playing one of our kids there? We've got John Joe Kenny, and we've got Mason Holgate, and we've got these other kids that can play there." And it seems to be now that because of the money they've spent, and again, it's not unreasonable to ask when you spend £150 million, especially when you're a club like Everton, to expect that the results come and the performances come. Now, the problem hasn't been so much the results, because they have played Tottenham and they have played Manchester United in the last 2 games, which has been where the real heat's come from. The problem has been the performances, and the performances have been absolutely gutless in both of them, and they should have lost by more than 4 last weekend. They should have lost by more than 4 in midweek. And I think 4-0, from what I've heard of the game, 4-0 probably flattered Man United in the end with 3 goals in 10 minutes in the last 10 minutes. But they still sounded like a team that completely didn't deserve to win that match and didn't deserve to get anything out of it. So It's performances. And again, you spend the kind of money they have. I can't think of many teams who have spent more than they have this summer. The ones I can think of off the top of my head are AC Milan, PSG, Manchester City. And outside of that, I can't think. I mean, Man United spent about 100 million. Maybe they crept over the 150 million pound mark. But aside from that, I can't think of anyone else. And to conclude Everton in that group, you need to see results. It's not unreasonable for Jose Mourinho to say that Everton are looking at the top four this year because of their summer business, when not only has Ronald Koeman said in the past, we're looking at the Champions League, and he's now gone and spent X amount of millions of pounds on it. It's not unreasonable to say that. And yet after the game, it was all, oh, well, you can't expect us to be challenging for the top four immediately. It's not going to click that quickly. I'm sorry, but you spend that kind of money, you expect some kind of result. And so far this season, Everton have been really poor. They just haven't shown anywhere near enough. They seem to have the balance wrong up front. A lot of complaints on social media they don't have a striker, even though they've got Wayne Rooney in their ranks. They've got Sandro Ramirez they've got up front as well. Gylfi Sigurdsson was playing as a striker at times against Man United. Just the balance seems to be completely off up front, and there's a growing disconnect at the moment between the fans and the fact the youth academy seems to have been pushed out by Koeman again now that he's got in the players he wants. I've said it since day one. He wanted this job because he wants Barcelona. He wants to go somewhere where he can spend money, bring in big players, win trophies, so that when Barcelona next need a manager, he can say, look at all the brilliant things I've done so far. And I'm sure he'll get there eventually because of the money he spent, the sheer amount of money he spent, and the fact he's a pretty good manager. But at the same time, the pressure he's under at the moment, completely warranted. You know, it's completely warranted because it's not only the money that he spent, it's also the abandonment of this youth policy. The Everton fans loved him for so much last year and lionised him for. It seems to be a complete abandonment of both of those things. And the thing he's replaced it with hasn't worked so far. So there's a lot of pressure on him. I'm not going to lie and say that I'm not enjoying it because I'm finding it absolutely hilarious. At the same time, I'm making hay while the sun shines because I know in a few months' time they'll have fixed it and they'll be doing very well in one of the cups. You know, so enjoy it while it lasts if you're a Southampton fan. If you're an Everton fan, you know, I'm sorry you're going through it. At the same time, I think the clouds will roll by, but it would just be interesting to see if the chairman decides that £150 million odd that he's invested in this squad is, you know, something to be patient with, or if he expects something more from it.
It is, I know, as you said, and it's difficult when you do a podcast like this because everybody is looking for you to sort of say, I told you so, and be sort of arrogant, but you did, you know, and you watched your own club under this managership, and, you know, I freely admit to saying a while ago that I could have seen a Koeman type sort of style manager at Arsenal, and I look at it now and I go, what was I thinking? And people were right to criticise me for saying it looking back, but yeah, I mean, it's fair to say that Everton are under pressure now to you know, to get this project right and to build on the amount of money they've got. And to me, they are still a second tier Premier League side at the moment. They're miles away from getting into that top six, in my humble opinion. But time will tell. Time will tell. I mean, things could change, but right now, I think Koeman is definitely under pressure. Something that Jose Mourinho is currently not under pressure. So,
quick double question to fire the Everton question back at you. Where do you think they finish, and do you think Koeman finishes the season?
8th. No. Well. 8th, yes, actually. Yeah, I think he goes at the end of the season, but I think he goes as a result of the season, if that makes sense. And yeah, I think they'll finish 8th. I think realistically, you've got the top 5 that we all know will probably be the top 5. The 2 Manchester clubs, Chelsea, Spurs, Arsenal, Liverpool, actually, sorry, so the 6. I think they're going to be I couldn't tell you where they're all going to finish, but I think those 6 will be those 6. And I do actually fancy that there will be a team above Everton, not currently in the standard 6. Who that team's going to be, I've got a sneaking feeling it might be Watford, you know. Despite what happened to them this weekend, I have a sneaking suspicion that Marco Silva will work a bit of magic there. I wouldn't even rule out a team, like we said earlier, like a Huddersfield going a really good season. But no, I think Watford is maybe the team to watch. And if you end up finishing the season in 8th, having spent all that money, as we said about Pep, I think questions have to be asked, and rightly so. And I think Koeman, and I think he's the sort of manager that he'll go of his own esteem because he won't want to be sacked.
I don't, but you know, the magic of opinions. No, I think Koeman will stay to the bitter end, and if he gets the sack, I think he'll mope and say you should have given me more time. I needed more time to get this across. But no, I don't think he would walk after 2 years if they've fallen short. Because like again, he wants the Barca job. You know, he wants that like a tick wants blood, and he'll stay at that club as long as he can, as far as
till the very bitter end. Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's one we'll definitely keep tabs on with Everton, of course. And if you're an Everton fan and you've got an opinion on Ronald Koeman, give us a nudge. We'll feature you in a podcast with your views. So tough one. The only other game to mention, of course, not too much to go into detail on this, but down at Stamford Bridge and David Luiz's karate training school is up and running again, which is good to see. He was, of course, dismissed in the latter stages. How side Kolasinac walked away from that challenge with barely a bruise. That man is an absolute tank, isn't he? I mean, you know, that any other player, that probably finishes their career, and he just sort of casually walks away and goes, nah, it's fine, I'm walking off. But that was probably the big incident of a 0-0 draw. Fair to say that probably shows that Arsenal can be hard to beat away from home, because, you know, I'm maybe slightly biased, but I thought they had the better chances overall in the game, and I thought they looked the better side.
Yeah, but they needed to be. You know, in a game like Chelsea away, you need to be showing that sort of strength. So it's nice to see that they can do it. The question I imagine that Arsenal fans would be asking is, why can't we see that more regularly? Because it seems like there's teams that turn up at Arsenal and somehow they end up collapsing against them. But against Chelsea, they were perfectly solid. So I almost want to say it's not the kind of game that's going to define their season, but that's a silly thing to say because it is exactly the kind of game that's going to define their season. But it's again, Arsenal are in a very strange state of flux where you can't really trust anything that you see at the moment, because next week it could be the complete opposite. So it's an excellent point. It's a very good performance, but you need to see it more consistently, I think, before Arsenal fans start to very tentatively start to throw their support back behind Arsene Wenger.
Yes, I'm fine. I'm happy. Just the memories of Anfield finally banished, at least for now, until Sky dig up all the highlights when we play them again in a few months' time. But still, until then, I shall happily sit on them. And I thought Chelsea were decent. It wasn't a great game. It wasn't sort of action packed, but I think it's fair to say Arsenal had probably the two best chances of the game: the Ramsey post and the Welbeck header, which went wide. So. I'll take that happily. Table-wise, before we go to some questions there, Manchester United, Manchester City, identical records at the top, both with 13 points and plus 14 goal difference. Chelsea sitting in third, 3 points back on them. Newcastle, weirdly, fourth. Spurs fifth, Huddersfield sixth. Burnley 7th, Liverpool 8th, Southampton 9th, West Brom 10th. And then down at the bottom end of the table, again, only 5 games played. It's very early, but Palace, pointless, goalless, pointless. 20th. Played 5, lost 5. Haven't scored a goal, conceded 8. Not looking good. Bournemouth also struggling, but that win on Friday night just rejuvenates their season a bit. It's their first win of the season over Brighton. Everton, as we said before, really struggling down 18th. Surely that's not going to continue, but 3 straight defeats is cause for alarm, with West Ham, Brighton, Leicester, Swansea, Stoke, Arsenal, Watford leading up the table to 11th. So that's that. Any standout fixtures across the weekend of English football that you've got your eye on? Anything Championship-wise or Premier League-wise for next week?
Once again, you've sprung that on me, so let me go and check.
I shall fill while you do that and say that we do have midweek Carabao Cup action, which to you and I is the League Cup.
It is the League Cup. I don't understand all this, but yeah, it is the League Cup.
Very quickly, Leicester, Liverpool, Brentford, Norwich, Wolves, Bristol Rovers, Burnley, Leeds, Bristol City, Stoke, Aston Villa, Middlesbrough, West Ham, Bolton, Palace, Huddersfield, Bournemouth, Brighton, Reading, Swansea, Spurs, Barnsley, Everton, Sunderland, Arsenal, Doncaster, Chelsea, Nottingham Forest, West Brom, Man City, Manchester United, Burton, Albion are your fixtures in midweek. Surely I've filled enough time for you now, Ross.
I would, in the Premier League, I would point quite quickly to Burnley versus Huddersfield, which I think is a fantastic clash of styles. Everton versus Bournemouth is an absolute bum fight, which I'm looking forward to. Manchester City, Crystal Palace, that could end anything in the world.
Cool. Wow.
Exactly. And Brighton, Hove Albion, Newcastle is a good clash to see how both sides have acclimatized to the Premier League. The Championship, very briefly. Reading Hull is another bum fight, which I'd look forward to seeing. Leeds versus Ipswich is a clash of two very good sides so far. Fulham, Middlesbrough, again, another good fixture. Your two TV fixtures next week. Your late kick-off is Aston Villa versus Nottingham Forest. If you haven't seen much of Nottingham Forest yet, that's worth a watch because, like I say, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Their 4 wins, 4 defeats doesn't reflect how well they played. But the Sunday fixture is the real highlight because for the first time in years, we have a league clash between Sheffield Wednesday and Sheffield United. So that is well worth your time because Sheffield United are a fantastic side. And you wouldn't believe, if you didn't watch them in League One, you wouldn't believe how well they played last year. They've come up to the Championship and they've been even better. So the Sheffield clash next weekend is the highlight of the entire weekend for me.
Yeah, good shout. And just for me, just look at those Premier League fixtures. I mean, the obvious two, West Ham Spurs. Obviously, that's a fierce rivalry. That there's fixture that ended Spurs' title challenge last season on I think it's a Saturday lunchtime game. And the other TV game is Leicester Liverpool. The one that actually stands out to me, weirdly, Swansea Watford. I'm going with Watford to win at Swansea, so I'm going to make that call now. But just have a sneaking suspicion that might be a decent game. So get your money on 0-0, everybody. You know the drill. So that is the week that was then in Premier League, in Europe, in EFL, all the way across all the leagues that we cover on this podcast. And we've just got enough time to squeeze in a couple of questions. We're probably not going to get to them all, I'm not going to lie, because there's quite a few here. I want to give a couple of quick shout outs before we do. Our good friend Tom, formerly 5-Star Flips, he put a lovely video up of Fratton Park where he went to watch Portsmouth beat Fleetwood at the weekend, 4-1 win, as Ross mentioned earlier on. As I put up a short video of his view from Fratton Park, so thank you for that, Tom. Couple of new followers as well. Who have we got here? We have got a chap called Tom Markham, who's a Hull City fan. He is a new follower, as is Harry Hainstock, who is a follower. He's a PA correspondent for Bromley FC. There you go, Ross. There's full hipster for you. Welcome, gentlemen. You've both been followed as we speak. In fact, also John Banks. I don't know who you are. I'm going to click on your profile because you look like a bot. Yes, John is a bot. So welcome, bot. Thank you for joining us and all your lovely botness. And we also had follows from a chap called Bob Hughes, who describes himself on Twitter as a vegetarian, pizza-loving, left-wing. And there goes my cat falling off the side. What does he describe himself as? Vegetarian, pizza-loving, left-wing, Port Vale music, craft beer, real ale. Now that's a description, if ever I heard one, Ross. So Bob is on board. And also Sedu, who, judging by his Twitter picture, I think he's a Liverpool fan. I think. Although, do you remember Josamy? Do you remember that name?
No, that doesn't ring a bell.
It's full hipster. He played for Liverpool back in the day, and it's a picture of him and Jibril Cisse embracing on his Twitter. So interesting that. I don't know. We'll have to ask him. Sedo, if you're listening, why that picture? Why? We're intrigued. Only other follows, I think, are bots, so I'm not going to give them any credit whatsoever because they're not real people. Although Liverpool FC followed us, weirdly, but it's not actually that. Yeah, you get the drift. Right, let's get some questions in then, Ross. Quick answers to these then. Quick fire round. First one comes from Harry Hainstock. Who will be the next manager sacked in the Premier League and why?
Oh, bloody hell, that's a good question. See, I don't think it's going to be Bilic. I think he's going to stumble through. I don't think it's going to be Koeman. I don't know. I genuinely don't know off the top of my head.
Roy Hodgson.
It would be a typical Crystal Palace if they ended up sacking him, wouldn't it? You know what? I'm going to say Mark Hughes.
Oh, good shout. Yeah, you read my mind a bit there because, Stoke still don't convince me at all.
Wibbly wobbly, aren't they?
Wibbly wobbly. I think that's a good shout. I think the only other one that maybe I'd look at under danger or in danger is Slaven Bilic. But, I think you're probably right. I think it's a tough question, that. It's a tough question. Oh, look, there's Jurgen Klopp talking to us as I speak. Thank you, Jurgen. Right, so thank you for the question. Harry Philip Jancic, what do you think about the whole incident around Cavani's penalty? That's probably one for me, isn't it? Silly, petty, children, footballers will be footballers. Did you see the story that broke tonight that apparently Thiago Silva had to stop the two having a physical fight in the dressing room? Wow. I mean, that's
I didn't, but if that's true, then Cavani's winning that flat out, isn't he?
Well, no, because he might miss.
Well, yeah, but when he finally hits, he's going to hit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, his movement, his ducking and diving will be brilliant, but ultimately he'll throw 3 punches, miss, and connect with a glancing blow to the left. And
I was going to save this till the end of the questions, but this is such a nice segue. I was just reading, and this is a story you'll probably have already heard by the time this podcast goes out, but I was just reading that apparently tomorrow morning, Rio Ferdinand is to announce a plan to become a pro boxer.
Because that'll end well. Yeah, because it's ended really well for other pros who've taken up boxing, hasn't it? Freddie Flintoff, although that was for charity, albeit. But yeah, don't think that's gonna. Who was the guy? Curtis, Sheffield United player. Do you remember this story? Curtis. Oh, I'm gonna have to Google this. There was a guy who used to play for Sheffield United. I'm googling it right now. He turned into a pro boxer, and just to prove I'm not wrong, Curtis Woodhouse. He transferred from. I think he played under Neil Warnock at Sheffield United. It was that long ago, and he has now turned pro. He's a pro boxer. So
there you go.
There you go. It can happen, but I'm just going to put it on record and say I don't think Rio Ferdinand's career will end well in boxing. But you know what? After the stuff he's been through in his life, fair play to him. If that's what he wants to do, crack on. So next question, Arian H, one of our regular listeners. Question for you all, or the two of us. Why did you fall in love with your respective leagues? Oh, that's a good question. For me, Ross, I fell in love with Liga in France because of, well, it's probably obvious, the Arsenal connection, the Arsene Wenger connection, researching so much about Monaco players that he'd signed when we brought in the likes of Vieira from France originally, Gilles Grimondi and Manu Petit arrived from Monaco, Remy Gard came from France, obviously Thierry Henry, Sylvain Wiltord, Robert Pires, the list is endless. But yeah, for me, it was all about the French connection to Arsenal. That got me intrigued in the league. I then fell in love with a certain Alexandre Lacazette in his young days at Lyon, which sort of ended up me being a bit stalkerish, finding any videos and DVDs I could of his performances. And then it grew from there. And now, obviously, with the availability on TV to watch these leagues or certain betting sites, which I won't mention, my love for it has grown and grown, and the more I watch the French league, the more I love it. So that's where I came from. How did you fall in love with the Championship? Was it just sort of the hipster element, or was there something about it? Southampton being down there?
It was simply experience. I fell in love with the Premier League because Southampton were in it. We were relegated in 2004-2005 season, and I remember I was 9, 10. Maybe 11. I forget when I was born. Anyway, I was quite upset that we'd been relegated, and I thought, what are we doing in the second tier where all these other crappy teams are going to be that aren't good enough for the Premier League? What are we doing down there? And then I watched the football and just fell in love with it because it was everything that I love about football. It's fast paced, it's energetic, it's end to end. There's goals everywhere. There's always a shock result. I mean, like I said earlier, Fulham absolutely thrashing Hull 5-0 last week, and they go to Bristol City this week and they get hammered 4-1. It's just that kind of league. It's just so unpredictable and so balmy, and being in it with Southampton was absolutely fantastic. And then we went down to League One, and then, obviously once we'd been saved from liquidation, we got the money in, we got Alan Pardew in, we started building this team with Ricky Lambert, Adam Lallana, Morgan Schneiderlin, everyone else, and the progression back up the league. So it was just fantastic to be involved in it. The horror of almost going out of business and the elation of coming back up, so well built. Just the experience of those leagues and getting to watch that football up close in person and seeing my favourite brand of football played on a weekly basis in my own backyard. It was everything I ever wanted from football. So
good answer and good question. That, thank you very much to Arian, who always gives us some great questions. Thank you, sir. This is going to be impossible for you to answer quickly, but you can do your best. Mitch Rapak, he says, question for Ross, if he's there. He's here. Who do you see as the best young player in the Championship right now?
Ryan Sessegnon.
I thought you were going to say that. I was
Absolutely, Brian
wondering.
Sessegnon.
Yeah.
I mean, there are plenty of others. I mean, the next one I'd name on the list is Ben Brereton of Nottingham Forest, who's not set the world alight so far, but is a very good striker. And you could name Ronaldo Vieira of Leeds, who's been very good when I've seen him, but he hasn't had much game time this year. The list could go on, but instantaneously, Ryan Sessegnon is absolutely fantastic. It won't be long before he ends up Manchester City plus. And another one I'll throw in just because I saw him a few weeks ago, Callum Britton at MK Dons. He came on for his debut at the age of 17, 18, scored the equalising goal against Oxford, but he looked absolutely brilliant for such a young kid. It was absolutely fantastic at fullback. So he's another one I've thrown for League One. But for the Championship, immediately Ryan Sessegnon. If you haven't seen him yet, you'll be hearing a lot more of him in a few years' time. In 10 years' time, it'll be somewhere like Manchester City, Manchester United, and be in the England team. He's just an absolutely outstanding talent.
Yeah, so I'm glad I was in sort of touch with you there and knowing what you might go for. So good shout. Right, now we always do this when we get questions like this. We always say, "Oh, we'll save that one for next week," and then we never get to them. So I'm going to press you for an answer on this, even if it's just random. Tom, formerly of the Fratton Park tweet, says, "If you guys had to pick a defence, including a goalkeeper, using players from any football era, who would you choose and why?" Right, I'm not having anyone bar Maldini at left back. So can we agree on that one?
You can if you like. I mean, my footballing knowledge extends back to about 2003, so there's going to be plenty of players I'd admit if I picked the best from my lifetime.
Okay, then let's switch that question up. Then you pick one for the modern era,
Right.
as in sort of last 5 to 10 years, and I'll pick one from me being an old git. So Buffon is my goalkeeper, Maldini's my left back, Javier Zanetti is my right back. And again, I'm literally doing this off the cuff, so I might miss players. Fabio Cannavaro is my centre back, along with it's got to be Chiellini for me. Godin comes close, but I think it's got to be Chiellini for me. So yeah, there's 150,000 players that I've probably missed there, but that back four for me would do a job. Dani Alves also actually has to be said comes close at right back, but Zanetti's an absolute legend. So yeah, that's mine. So give us a back four and a goalkeeper.
I mean, mine's going to be extremely patchy. I'm going to get slaughtered for this. I'm
Hey,
going
you're
to
doing it
say
with no prep. It's all good.
I'm going to say Van der Sar in goal. Ashley Cole at left back.
Yeah, hard to disagree. Yeah.
Bloody hell. I'd have Bonucci a centre back. I can't even think of a world-class right back off the top of my head. From the last 10 odd years, a right back that I've always looked at and thought, my God, why aren't you playing at Southampton?
If you say Kyle Walker, I'm going to end this podcast right now.
No, I can't think of a right back. I really can't.
Lee Dixon.
If we just had a dearth of right backs in the world in the last years, I can't think of a single one that's immediately.
Gary Neville?
Yeah.
Gary
Neville,
Neville,
that's a decent shout. I mean, he'll fill the place until someone else springs to mind. So
especially if you've got Ashley Cole the other side, yeah.
Yeah, Neville right back and centre back to part of Bonucci. I am going to be hideously biased because I can't think of anyone else, and I'm going to say Alderweireld because he's my favourite defender in the world.
I'd have loved you if you'd said Francis Benali then. That would have been... yeah.
I can't think of someone else that immediately leaps off the page for Bonucci, but I'm going to say Alderweireld because I think he's absolutely beautiful. But yeah, there will be plenty, and there'll be people out there screaming, "Why aren't you saying blah blah?" I mean, John Terry. There's one immediately I've just thought of that could probably be in there as well. But then I've got 3 Englishmen in the back line, which is not good. So yeah, I mean, I'd have Van der Sar, Cole, Neville, Bonucci, and Alderweireld because I'm struggling to think of another one.
Well, let's say, for example, you had to have it as English. You could always just put Terry in ahead of Bonucci, couldn't you? So that's fine. You can have whatever you want. And seeing as you've chucked that question at us, Tom, what's yours? Because we need to know what yours is after all.
Yeah, don't think about it. Just type it because that was hard.
Yes, it was very hard. But as I say, I always do this. People ask us these questions like, "Oh, we'll do that next week's homework," and then life gets in the way and we never answer questions. So from now on, that's going to be our new staple of a podcast. We're going to answer questions and come up with the most random answers. Anyway, 3 last questions, and then we're out of here because we've gone way past our 2-hour time limit, but I'm sure people won't mind too much. Jimmy, our good friend Jimmy, he asks, oh, actually, it's one question, so that's even shorter. So, Clement Grenier, it's probably for me this one, has yet to make us so much as the bench for Lyon this season. Why do you think Lyon kept him around, and what he does, or what future do you think his holds? Well, ironically, Jimmy, being a man of MLS fandom as you are, as indeed I am too, I have a sneaking suspicion that's where Mr. Grenier will end up at the midway part of this season, or at the end of the domestic MLS season now. The problem with Clement Grenier, put my teeth in, is he's a wonderful, wonderful footballer, but fitness. He's never been fit for a consistent period of time. And I think until that issue is rectified, I am surprised he's not even made Lyon's squads, but it's clear that Lyon this season want to go with youth. They want to play these young, exciting players like Omdobele, like we mentioned earlier on. It's one of those. It didn't work out at Roma at all. Maybe he might get a loan move in January. He might end up at a sort of lower mid-table Premier League side, perhaps. But no, criminal waste of talent, but unfortunately not of his own device. More his injury record that has plagued his career. So it's unfortunate for a wonderful player. So, yeah, interesting one. That tough.
I've always seen him as the good China. Grenier. It's just that you always think, oh, we'll bring him back at some point, and then you just never did. It's a real shame.
Drop him and bits of him go everywhere. Yeah, it's a shame, but wonderfully talented footballer. Final question then. This is from our good friend Bobby Chakraborty. Cavani and Neymar having handbags at dawn. It's this question again. Which teammate should give them a kick in the backside? I think even you can answer this one as well. Now, I would have said Krychowiak, but of course he's gone now. Thiago Motta, I think, is the obvious answer to this one. Hard as nails, no nonsense, wears old-fashioned black Mizuno boots with the tongues. You wouldn't mess with Thiago Motta. Anybody else in the PSG side you'd quite like to see kick Neymar and Cavani up the bum?
No, but it should be Unai Emery.
Yes, agreed. Yes, I think we can both agree on that one. If you could have one player in world football in your footballing lifetime to give a strong dressing down to somebody, who would it be? Don't say that.
Zinedine Zidane, I think.
Oh, headbutts at dawn. Lovely.
I think Zidane. I barely got to see Zidane, which is one of my huge disappointments because I got into football just as he was starting to fade out, and when I first got into it, I watched English football only. But from what I did see of him, he looks like a man with such high standards that if you were stood there squabbling over a penalty, he'd push both of you to the ground, grab the ball himself, stick it in the net, pick you both up by the scruff of the neck, push you back to the halfway line and say, get on with it. So, Zidane.
Interesting answer. Just because I know that Bobby wants an Arsenal-esque answer to this question for me as well, I'd love to see Lauren, formerly Arsenal right back, Cameroon international. I'd love to see him kick one of those up in the air. That would be quite fun, I have to say. So good question, Bobby. Thank you very much for that. Right, that is it, Ross. What a mammoth podcast this week. I hope our listeners haven't been too bored with me and you prattling on, but it's been a while, hasn't it? And when your internet is good, we have to make hay.
You might not see me for another month yet, so yeah.
We've got to make hay with these things. The good thing is with our listeners is that they stay loyal to us. We get consistent downloads and listening figures. So thank you all very, very much. And this is the part where we want to hear from you guys, because you guys and girls are the people that we do this for. As we record this now, I think Ross is sat in his room. I'm sat in my bedroom at two different undisclosed locations in the UK. Not hard to look up if you want to know where we are. We do this for the love of the game and just sort of enjoying talking about football. We don't get paid for it, and we're not looking to get famous out of it. Well, maybe you are, Ross, but that's your own career path, which is fair enough. But we do this just for the enjoyment. So we need to know from you listeners, are you enjoying the new format? Obviously, we've had a lot of change this season. We've had members move on. We've had people sort of move into the background a little bit. Obviously, John's not around as much at the moment because of his work commitments. Unfortunately, life gets in the way, boys and girls. So we just want to know from you guys and girls whether you like the new format. Do you like the fact that we can cram it all into one podcast a week? Unfortunately, the option of doing two podcasts a week is not going to happen for the foreseeable future, unfortunately. We've just got too much going on in our individual lives to commit to to 2 nights a week. So we are going to continue with the 1 show a week format. But we want to know from you in particular, do you want us to keep the European element into the podcast? Would you like to hear us just talk EFL and Premier League from now on? We're not saying we won't talk about European games, of course we will, but we could open that option up to you guys to ask us just questions. So if you have an individual question about a specific game, whether it's Lyon or Besiktas or Benfica or Spartak Moscow, if there's a certain team that you want to ask a question, or there's a certain match, a certain incident, we can always ask a question, or we can always answer questions, or if you prefer, we'll keep things exactly as they are and do a full league rundown. So let us know what you think. Vote in or out. We might well put a poll up. I think that's what we're planning, Ross, wasn't it? Just to stick a little poll up and see what people think maybe. But yeah, tweet us your views or DM them or email them, whatever it is you'd like. Leave a YouTube comment, whatever it is you'd like. Let us know what you think. And if there's something you don't like, let us know. And if there's something you do like, let us know. So thank you very much for listening as usual. Ross, hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Fingers crossed.
Internet allowing. We're hoping to get back to a more regular Sunday record for a Monday publish in the future, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, hopefully we'll have you back again soon. So yeah, keep the faith for Man United on Saturday, won't you?
I'll certainly try, yeah.
Fingers crossed. But that is it from us for tonight. So thank you very, very much for listening. We really do appreciate you all listeners, as I've said before. Thanks again to 4 Elements for their continued support of the podcast and indeed assistance. Thank you to Kris and the team. Do check them out at 4 Elements DES on Twitter. Don't forget them. And our thanks, of course, to the usual team when we're not here. So our thanks to Joel, to Josh, and to James, who will be appearing soon, he promises, and of course to John on the buttons, and tonight Danny on the buttons. He's not here, but he is here, people. He's still around. So thank you to the crew, and of course all of our people behind the scenes as well. So thanks to you all. We have been the Football Hipsters. This has been another podcast for another week. Enjoy your midweek European action or League Cup action, and we'll be back to talk weekend next time.